Well, good day and welcome to the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. It absolutely means everything that you decided to spend your time with us for the very first day of the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference. I'm absolutely looking forward to what the next 3 days have in store for you and I. We're going to have this relationship, but it's going to be absolutely exciting. There's going to be a lot of information sharing. There's going to be a lot of exciting ideas and a lot of engaging content. My name is Sia Sangweni, and I have the absolute honor and the privilege of being your master of ceremonies once again for this PAMRO Virtual Conference. So let's get straight into it. You know, this year, PAMRO celebrates its 22nd anniversary. So that's 22 years of research, experts from across Africa and the rest of the world coming together to exchange knowledge and to learn from one another's successes and failures, with the ultimate goal of harmonizing research methodologies and encouraging excellence in the industry. So we're very, very proud to welcome you to this second virtual conference. So just when you thought PAMRO had raised the bar high enough, you know, if you joined us last year, well, here we are raising the bar once again. It's going to be absolutely exciting with speakers from all around the world. Let me just tell you, I got a little side whisper from the United Nations. They're even jealous that we have this global gathering, okay? So an industry-leading conference like this would not be possible without some incredible partners who've joined on and made this conference possible. So I want to just take a quick moment to thank them. A big, big thank you goes out to Borderless Access, DSTV Media Sales, Nielsen, Telmar, Ornico, Plus 94 Research, and Ipsos. We absolutely are grateful that you partnered with us for this year's conference. And so if you do want to join in, please do so. Go onto social media, share your thoughts, your ideas, talk to us. It's at PAMRO_org, so PAMRO_ORG on Twitter, amongst other things. And then you can also use the hashtag PAMRO21. So you're ready to get things started? Let's do so. If you need any other information on the conference as the day goes on, and actually over the course of the next 3 days, you can visit the PAMRO website, PAMRO.org, and especially if you'd like to be a PAMRO member, we absolutely love to have you on. Please visit the PAMRO website to join and you can become a member. But first, before we get things started, let's get an official PAMRO welcome. Please put your hands together wherever you are, and already I believe you are doing so. Let's please welcome PAMRO President, Dr. Sfiso Falala.
Thank you very much, Sia, for that warm and rousing welcome. One of the best and loudest and proudest that I've ever received. And greetings and welcome to everyone from all of us at PAMRO. It is really an honor and privilege to officially declare the 2021 annual conference open for business. I will shortly be asking all speakers to get ready and to come to the podium. Thank you, speakers, for the amount of work that is going into preparing for this conference. We are one big research community in the world and on the continent of Africa, wherever you might be. It is at such conferences that we are able to compare notes, share insights, and elevate the status of media research in a measurement environment that has become ever more complex. It has been a relatively quiet year so far in terms of regional activities within PAMRO. The disruptive effects of the coronavirus has created the situation we find ourselves in, whereby most of you have been rather tentative in your planning. And we have this vicious cycle of waiting for favorable trends to take place before we invest and before we spend. It is my hope that this conference will have nuggets to convince us that we are a small part of the trend that we need to see. I am pleased to report that your organization, PAMRO, is in a healthy state and on a sound financial footing, notwithstanding the fact that our last paid-for conference was in 2019 in Mauritius. I'd like to especially welcome all of our members and encourage all non-members listening to consider subscribing to our organization and becoming a member. There are many benefits of this, which include access to the papers that will be shared at this conference this week, and of course, previous papers and access to our research experts. I personally look forward to welcoming you as a new member of PAMRO. Details of membership application can be found on our website, which is pamro.org. We will be piloting within the acceptable rules of the pandemic a different format of this conference, considering that we still regard this as a virtual conference. There is no doubt in our minds that these virtual conferences are intimate, flexible, riveting, and productive. Given the continental nature of our organization, what we are missing is the ability to bond with our peers from around the continent and around the world. It was wonderful in years gone by to be able to literally sit around the baobab tree, which is so emblematic of our organization, and together to find uniformity in the work that we do. We need to accept the reality that with advances in science, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, we are not too far off from communicating through holograms with simultaneous language translation, while projecting a true physical and vocal identity and personal mannerisms. Researchers do not need reminding that wherever we might go in the world or out of it, our existence is only ever in our minds. Something science is exploiting to the full to allow us future trips to distant planets and stars virtually. It is quite a healthy debate to have that the meaning of the word virtual conference is under the microscope, with some arguing that the word virtual appears to suggest that the conference is makeshift in nature, or that it is responsible for the transmission of ideas of a fleeting nature. I would not be surprised if all conferences in future are regarded equally and the word virtual dropped for lack of relevance and appropriateness. The wheels of change are slow and need to accommodate the insatiable human appetite for familiarity. Most of us today will happily use a check account from a bank and call it that, together with the bank calling it that as well, even though we no longer use checkbooks. The coronavirus pandemic has demonstrated that we can adapt, but this often requires substantial doses of coercion. Let us face it, Zoom, through which we are connecting today at PAMRO, was not designed after the advent of the coronavirus. There must be hundreds, if not thousands, of great ideas out there that are confined to the dustbins because of lack of human incentive to accept them. It is my wish that this conference will share and debate such transformative ideas because we need them. As researchers, the days of confrontational competition are well and truly behind us, for the reason that progressive ideas require diverse inputs, and research knowledge is now more cumulative in nature than it is exclusive. I encourage you to work with each other and to buy from each other. Our industry is way too small compared to our brothers and sisters in media, advertising, marketing, public relations, management consulting, information technology, and so on and so forth. If we want industry to grow, which we do, and fit into the digital economy seamlessly, we have no option but to view complementarity as being more essential than competition in the narrow but broadening space that we find ourselves in. Let us find ways of extending networking beyond the next few days. The myth that one can rob Peter to pay Paul belongs in the annals of history. Herewith is the updated and, dare I say, happy version. We need to grow Peter to pay Paul, Mark, Susan, James, Sarah, Jack, and their crowds, and all of our crowds. I am, of course, using metaphors and euphemism to say to you, let us think big, let us work big, think and work big beyond our organizations. Imagine a world where we could evolve and change voluntarily without a gun being held to our heads, albeit by microscopic organisms such as the coronavirus. Africa is one place that we always love. We love Africa dearly. However, you tend to feel from time to time that it hardly ever changes. I had a quick look at some of the leading headlines in the New York Times about Africa, and I thought, what is it that they could be saying about our beautiful continent? Well, similar things to what you would find in the Middle East, you would find in other parts of the world. An example, key leader of West African terrorist group is dead. Biden promotes vaccine donation in meeting with Kenya's president. 6 out of 7 coronavirus cases in Africa are going undetected, and so on. Same old story. And this is where we come in as researchers. Researchers are a tonic for change. Socrates argued once that evil didn't exist and that the main cause of unacceptable, unwholesome behavior was ignorance. And therefore, perhaps with advances in research and advances in education, we can play our role in reducing the sad tales that come across so often whenever Africa is being discussed. At this critical point in our history and our industry, measurement is indispensable, and I look forward to all contributors and what they have to share. Please feel free to participate, to send us your messages, thoughts and other ideas that might require further research. We would welcome such input. Colleagues, PAMRO board, Executive Director Jennifer Daniel, thank you for preparing for this year's conference, which promises to be exciting. It is my honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker today, a man that doesn't need any introduction, Bruce Whitfield. He is an award-winning financial journalist. His daily money show on 702 and Cape Talk is compulsory listening for anyone who wants to know what is happening in the political economy. Bruce also hosts a show called Taking Stock on ENCA, and he contributes as editor to the Financial Mail. He really presents some riveting and compelling, challenging content for audiences and everyone that listens to him. And he considers this relevant to South Africa. I have to say that when I first came across Bruce's book, The Upside of Down, I had just listened to a talk by, I think it was Rob Hessoff, at a conference in Cape Town, which was supposed to be an investment conference. And I was feeling kind of down because of what was said. After reading the book, The Upside of Down, it changed my perspective. And I really am pleased that we have Bruce, because the way he sees things, the way he visualizes information, and the way he puts things across is something that we need in PAMRO, is something that we need at this conference and in this continent. So thank you, Bruce, for agreeing to take part. And I know that there's a song that says that money, money, money must be funny in a rich man's world. Well, you talk so much about money. I wish I knew half of what you do know about, in fact, 10% of what you do know about money. I wonder whether, Bruce, money, money, money is funny in your world. Over to you, Bruce.
Knowledge without action is worthless, Safi. So thanks very much indeed. It's lovely to be here, and thank you very much for your very, very kind comments. I'm delighted you've read the book. Sia, hold it up, please. You've got a copy. I know you've got a copy. Show us what you've got. Show us what, that's it. First edition. The second edition came out earlier this year, and I'm very, very flattered that so many people have had a huge and positive response to it. And I think the story of South Africa, in as much as it is a story about, it could be a story about so many African economies as well. When you go into mainstream media and you go into global media in particular, Africa is a tiny part of their agenda, and the big if it bleeds, it leads stories make it onto the pages of big media. And that's why that narrative is a consistent narrative of bad news. And I got sick and tired of that single one-line binary narrative of South Africa's. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who had big black rings under his eyes and was traumatized and looked like he'd been beaten up by some bad guys. And I said, "What have you done?" He said, "I've written a book and I want you to feel my pain. So I'm going to introduce you to the publisher of my book." And so off I went for a meeting with Terry Morris at Pan Macmillan, and we sat and did a spidergram over a lunch. And it had a terribly rude title in the beginning because rude titles were very popular in those days, but she convinced me that the upside of down would be a title with a far greater longevity. So let me share with you just some of the insights from the upside of down that I hope you will relate to today. And I'm going to kick off with something I think that we've all become very, very used to. And if you ever go to the movies, you remember movies, they were great fun. Cinemas, have Netflix, but all disaster movies always start with a scientist being ignored by somebody in authority. They go to the governor, they go to the mayor, they go to the president, and they're warned of impending disaster. And they're told things like, "We don't have the budget. We can't disrupt the economy to solve this problem. We need to go because this is the way we do things around here." And we have been warned for many, many years that things are going poorly and things are going badly, most notably on something like the virus. Now, Bill Gates is credited, of course, as being this great visionary in 2016 when he spoke about the next thing that was going to kill 10 million people in the world was not going to be a war, but would be a viral outbreak. And he knew that, not because he's a scientist, but because he is an epic reader of all kinds of books. If you've seen the documentary Inside Bill's Brain, you would see him walking around with that shopping bag full of books, which he consumes on a regular basis and shares his reading lists to anybody who's interested. But he would have read work by people like Joshua Liederberg, who I choose to quote here, talking about the single biggest threat to man's continued dominance of the planet is the virus. And I like Time magazine covers to illustrate this particular point because they're very clear, they're very unambiguous in their view. I'm going to the early 1990s, and I'm sure further back than that, Time magazine was regularly running stories about viruses. And when I was in Davos in January last year, it's like somebody who's got an MBA. They tell you when I was in Davos. And when I was in Davos in January last year, and we saw Donald Trump completely unbeatable, we had the US economy flying, we had low tax rates, low unemployment rates, the stock market was doing absolutely brilliantly. And Donald Trump arrived at Davos swaggering as only Donald Trump can swagger. And he had Davos eating out of the palm of his hand. The global elites loved Donald Trump and his offering to the world. But it was at that conference where people started going, "There's a virus in China." And the overwhelming sense of it was, well, maybe it'll just be like SARS or Ebola. It's not likely to become this global pandemic. And these things happen all the time. But this time it was different. And it has led to the single biggest disruption in the world since World War II, since the Spanish flu of 1919, I beg your pardon, the Great Depression of 29, World War I was also a massive globally disruptive event. This is the biggest disruption we've seen in our lifetimes, and hopefully the biggest one we ever see. But it's not going to be, because we are ignoring warnings all over again. COP26 is happening in Glasgow this weekend with climate change on the agenda. And again, Time magazines tell us that we've been discussing this flippin' thing for a very, very long time. And we're only truly beginning to come to terms with the idea, and maybe COVID-19 is a very odd blessing in disguise when it teaches us what happens when global systems fail, because we've teed up the global economy to serve us in a particular way. And we're headed, courtesy of our consumption of the planet's very limited resources, in the aggressive way that we do it, in the very efficient way that we do it, burning coal and other fossil fuels in order to create the energy that makes these conversations possible, and our cars go and everything else. But we headed to this, this dreadful 3-degree plus world. And if you don't believe in climate change and you say to yourself, well, climate change is normal, climate has been changing all the time. What we're seeing now is the consequence of human intervention in climate coming to the fore at an ever-increasing rate. And we're beginning to see, I mean, in Canada this year, if you've ever been to Canada in winter and you've gone 100 miles north of the American border, you know that you don't see too many people up there because it is flippin' freezing for a large part of the year. It is a very, very cold part of the world. However, in Canada this year, there were temperatures measured in the summer at plus 50 degrees Celsius. Wildfires all over the world, breaking out all over the place. The powerful storms, the Atlantic storms that come across the Atlantic Ocean, that come into the southern states of the United States. And we've seen the devastation over the years of New Orleans and other parts of Louisiana and the southern states of the United States. But this year, those storms pushing north and getting as far as New York City, and there's 7 inches of rain dumping on Central Park. 30, I think, people died. In New York City, they drowned in basement flats in New York City as this unprecedented weather pattern took hold. The raging fires we've seen in Turkey and in Greece, and 18 months ago, 2 years ago in Australia. The world is changing, and we are seeing an intensity of weather patterns that is absolutely petrifying for the future. Rising oceans, the hunger, the poverty, social unrest. And of course, all of these warnings are coming together as well. And with COVID-19, we're getting a new set of warnings, and from people like Melinda Gates. This pandemic has magnified every existing inequality in our society. And we've seen this wreak havoc across the globe. Many Northern Hemisphere economies have recovered far more quickly than African economies have and will. Certainly from a South African perspective, there are at least 1.5 million more people unemployed than were in January last year. And already in South Africa, one of the world's highest unemployment rates, we had a crisis of epic proportions back then, and it's just been getting worse since then. This pandemic isn't the problem in itself. Yes, we all know people who have got terribly sick and some who have died as a result of this disease, but this big dislocation that this has caused is going to have a long tail, long-term consequences with which we're going to have to deal. So should we be surprised that South Africa has just been waiting for a catalyst for something quite catastrophic to happen? And in July this year, tens of thousands of people took to the streets, and shops were looted, shopping centers were looted. The South African state failed to respond nearly adequately enough, quickly enough. When something like Sasria, for example, which is the South African government-owned insurance company, which is created specifically in 1979 to deal with political violence and damage done by political unrest, Sasria was designed to cope with political unrest, and it had huge capital reserves, brilliantly run state-owned enterprise, squeaky clean, not a blemish on its track record or its character. But Sasria has run out of money, courtesy of the between 30 and 40 billion rands worth of claims it faces as a result of the riots in July. An extraordinary amount of damage was done then, and of course, huge business interruption as a result, with some chain stores seeing hundreds of stores being damaged, thousands of ATMs getting hit as well. And we just saw confidence evaporate over 8 days. And I see Quinita Hunter and her colleagues at News 24 have written a book already, which is out on the streets, all about what was really going on in those days. But the chief executive of one of Africa's biggest retailers, it's pulling back to South Africa now, food retailers, ShopRite, headquartered in Cape Town. His name is Peter Engelbrecht, and he was telling me on the Friday night before all hell broke loose, they got very good intelligence that it was coming. 18 trucks were petrol bombed on one of the biggest and busiest highways in Africa, the N3 between Johannesburg and Durban, and at a place called the Moy River Toll Plaza. 18 trucks were petrol bombed, and that sent a warning that big trouble was coming. However, everybody Peter Engelbrecht called either didn't answer the phone or simply ignored the warnings. But we shouldn't have needed any warnings for this, because South Africa has got one of the most unequal societies on earth. And it doesn't take much when people are hungry, when people are poor, and people are desperate, to say, go and help yourself, because this is an opportunity for you to seize a better life. And it's led to a huge level of disruption. But I do want you to be optimistic about the future, because I think if we act appropriately to the warnings that we receive, we can begin to make, for example, this country, South Africa, the biggest economy in Africa, on and off between Nigeria and South Africa, a very powerful force for good, not only on this continent, but around the world. And when I talk about optimism, I don't mean optimism as in, oh, it's all going to be all right. The patient is lying in hospital bed, and of course the doctors will bring them right. It's not that kind of sort of hopeful, prayer-led optimism that so many people depend on so desperately, but it is this idea that we can positively influence the future. I have, for the last 20, 25 years, studied billionaires and have had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing many, many very successful South African and African entrepreneurs who've had an enormous impact way beyond their dreams and aspirations when they started out. And they have a couple of things in common, but the most important thing that they have in common is a sense of optimism. Even the grumpy ones have an overwhelming sense of optimism, simply because they see the future as something they can either take advantage of, in other words, provide a solution to a problem in the future, or they can positively influence that future through doing the business that they do. And I'll share a couple of those examples with you this morning. But in South Africa, we have a huge amount of rage, and it's an understandable rage, but right now that rage is governed. This morning, Eskom, the national electricity, well, it's odd calling it an electricity provider, the intermittent electricity provider of South Africa, came out with a warning that it would be load shedding. It's been doing this for the last 13 years. South Africa ran out of electricity in 2008, and then, to its credit, fairly quickly came up with a system of ensuring that the national grid didn't fail completely, and introduced this idea of switching off blocks of the country at different times of the day in order to ensure that everybody got a little bit of electricity, a little bit of electricity sharing, if you like. Long before Uber, we were sharing electricity, but long before Uber was sharing rides. But it is much more serious than that, of course. And under new management at Eskom for the last 18 months or so, we've gradually begun to see plans for the future of Eskom. But generally, we're quite nice people, I'd like to think. And when we have electricity, we're fairly happy. When we get load shed, however, as we are right now, and Eskom has extended its load shedding schedule because its power stations are poorly managed, poorly run, neglected, and in some cases there is suggestion of complicity in deliberately harming the national grid. We get load shed, we get very cross. But when you combine all of the stuff that happens in South Africa, our brains go into a meltdown, and we get incredibly hard done by. But it reminds me of what Piet Mouton, who is the son of a guy called Jannie Mouton, who started a business in South Africa called PSG. Jannie had been fired by his business partners from a stock brokerage that he had begun, and sat at home for 2 years, a kind of lockdown of sorts, because he didn't know what he was going to do with his life. He was 49 years old, and he needed to come up with an idea. And the man had a brain like a computer. Computers aspired to be as smart as Jannie Mouton. And people would bring out ideas to him and proposals to him, and eventually decided he'd go into financial services, until one day, a couple of young men, they were in those days, brought an idea for a new bank to Jannie Mouton. And it coincided with a banking crisis in South Africa, which led to the disappearance of about 30 banking brands across the South African landscape. What was it about these individuals that thought they needed another bank in South Africa that is dominated by 4 big banks and another one called Investec? The founders of Capitec, however, saw an opportunity that others did not see. They chose to go into banking, a segment of the population which the rest of the banking sector regarded as unbankable. And they said, we can start off by providing microloans and creating a branch network, and ultimately we will have a retail bank of scale. That retail bank is today the biggest retail bank in South Africa. It's got 17 million customers. It has got an enormous deposit base. It's got an enormous loan book, and it is expanding its branch networks in a digital era where most are cutting back. It's got a fundamentally different approach to doing business. Yanni Mouton funded that business. He's funded private school businesses and old age homes and ideas because he sees these businesses as improving the future. Nissan Pitt stands up at a conference and says, negative people never build anything. And it's such a wonderfully simple and clear perspective. I mean, who knew when Steve Jobs stood up in 2007 and announced the iPhone 1, which if you've got one and you try and switch it on and operate it, you will realize what a clunky waste of space that thing is. But it was revolutionary in its day. Just in the same period that South Africa lost its electricity supply, of course. Elon Musk became the richest chief executive to ever live yesterday as Tesla stock went up 12%. It made him worth over $1 trillion in his, no, he's going to be worth over $1 trillion in his own right, I beg your pardon, but certainly Tesla, the company that is making him so filthy rich, is worth over $1 trillion. It's joined the likes of Apple and others. And this is a guy born in Pretoria, South Africa, part of the African continent, who took his wild and loopy ideas to Silicon Valley and has found fertile ground for his brilliance. Because in South Africa, I hate to say, he probably would have done incredibly well, but would never have been worth nearly as much as he is today, and certainly wouldn't be having the huge global impact that he is having. And he, through the success of Tesla, is driving a change which is incredibly positive and almost forcing consumer minds to change over the way we will drive in the future. And the big brands worldwide are responding to what he is doing. And that has also enormous positive effect on climate in the long term. So you can sit and feel sorry for yourself, I think is the message there, or you can go out and build something useful. But it is hard in what I like to call the disinformation age. And I think we live in this really tumultuous era. And information has never flowed as quickly, as freely, as easily, and with more levels of deception than it does today. And I think this is a massive problem. I want to give you a demonstration of something that is 100% factually accurate and is a complete and utter lie. I think you'll find this interesting. This is a statement from the J.G. Zuma Foundation. It's a couple of months old. And it is compiled by Mzwanele Manyi, and you would have seen Jacob Zuma when he went just before the casino visit that he made last week after being released from jail on medical grounds, after being jailed for contempt of court. This statement was released, and it says, President Zuma, a freedom fighter who's become first prisoner of the Constitutional Court, jailed without trial. Now, let's break it up. President Zuma. Now, I'm not sure what our convention is. I think we would refer to Nelson Mandela as President Mandela. We'd refer to Kgalema Motlanthe as President Motlanthe. We'd refer to Thabo Mbeki as President Mbeki. It's a sign of respect. The Americans do it. So I'll give them that one. Okay, that's a nice convention. You pay respect to the office of the president. Jacob Zuma was president for 9 years. President Zuma, fine, we'll get it to him. A freedom fighter. Yeah, absolutely. He spent 14 years of his life on Robben Island for his fight against the apartheid state. So absolutely true. Who's become the first prisoner of the Constitutional Court. Now, it's a little bit too emotive for my liking, but technically it is true. The Constitutional Court had never previously ordered anybody to be jailed. So yeah, first prisoner of the Constitutional Court. I think we can argue that that is fair. And jailed without trial is absolutely true. There was no trial. You've got to participate in the legal process to stand trial. Now, but there was no trial, and there cannot be a trial for contempt of court. It is simply a judgment which is made when you are in contempt. But all of these thoughts put together are completely accurate. But it is created to fabricate the true position of somebody who's finding himself at the wrong end of the judicial system. And today, I was very pleased to see that the courts have ruled that he cannot have the prosecutor who jailed his former financial advisor, or saw that his former financial advisor, Shabir Sheikh, was jailed 12, 13 years ago, a man called Billy Downer, kicked out. And Billy Downer will be the prosecutor when Jacob Zuma stands trial on corruption charges in April next year. So the pushback is strong, and information is weaponized in a war about truth. And Justice Sisi Khampepe takes no nonsense, of course. She describes how he explicitly and intentionally decided not to oppose contempt proceedings. He simply did not participate in the legal system. So the Constitutional Court felt completely justified, of course, in its approach. And so much of what we see, however, in this weaponization of information, this war against truth, is this play on human frailty and vulnerability. Who did this to us? Because if you can create a narrative that almost creates a sense of victimhood, well, then you get empathy and sympathy on your side. It does nothing to build a country, a continent, a better world. All it does is weaponize information and gets groups of people. You can find any interest group in the world to agree with any crackpot idea you think you might have. You think you've got an original thought that's mad? Put it out on the internet and you will find people who will come to your way of thinking. Instead, what we need to be saying is, hold on a second, what do we do wrong? What have we done wrong that means that the world sees us the way it does? The world sees the African continent as a hopeless continent, a continent of loss and sadness and sorrow and civil war and infighting. How do we fix that image? And that is a far more proactive and productive approach which we need to take as citizens of this continent. But it's not only us. It's not only us. I mean, Voltaire, who lived in the century up until the French Revolution of 1789, warned that what happened on the 6th of January this year in the US Capitol was likely, because anybody who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities, said Voltaire. But that was before the French Revolution. And we saw what happened in January this year, of course, with the explosion of rage which broke out at the US Capitol. I beg your pardon, I couldn't find the mute button. It's incredibly rude of me to cough in your ears. I apologize. It's not contagious. Other viruses travel over the internet, not human ones. So facts matter. Facts absolutely matter in our understanding of the world. Maybe another example. World War II, 1944. A group of nerds are sitting in Manhattan trying to figure out why American planes are getting shot down in the war against Japan. And they're getting shot down. There are hundreds and pilots are dying and it's devastating. And so they map out where the planes that manage to make it back to base are getting hit. And they look at this and they say, look at the spread of shot. Clearly, we've got to make our planes stronger on the tail, the tips of the wings, the fuselage behind the cockpit. This is the most important thing, because these planes are getting hit, and that's where they're getting hit. Until one of them, a statistician from Hungary, a Jewish guy called Abram Walt, said, no, hold on a second. We're not seeing what we're not seeing. And they all looked at him slightly quizzically and said, hold on a second, what do you mean we're not seeing what we're not seeing? He said, we're not seeing where the airplanes that don't make it back are getting hit. We have to assume that these planes are absolutely fine. They're getting shot up. Yes, they are. They're full of holes. They look like a piece of Swiss Emmentaler cheese when they land. But they make it back. That means these aircraft are incredibly resilient when they hit in the places that we're seeing. We're not seeing where the airplanes that crash into the ocean on their way back are getting hit. And we've got to assume, by process of elimination, that they're getting hit, and the pilot's getting killed in the cockpit. The engines are getting taken out. And that's what's causing the planes to crash. And have fundamentally changed the way they saw it, because so often we judge things at face value. We judge information at face value, particularly in election times, or particularly in times of great vulnerability. We become incredibly susceptible to what is obviously in front of us, rather than looking behind the scenes and trying to understand what is actually going on. Yuval Noah Harari, who wrote Sapiens and other great books, he said, having power means knowing what to ignore. I said to you earlier that some of the best billionaires I've spoken to over the years have the fact that they're optimists in common. Another thing they have in common is their ability to navigate the scariest noise that makes others cripple and buckle in the face of adversity. They navigate the noise. Adrian Gore started discovery almost at the time that a man called Chris Hani was assassinated, leader of the South African Communist Party in South Africa. The one incident that very nearly tipped South Africa over the edge and into civil war in 1992. A young man called Adrian Gore goes to see the founders of the First Rand Group, before it was First Rand and then was RMB, and said to them, I want to change healthcare insurance in South Africa, because once democracy happens and the healthcare system is open to everybody, there isn't enough healthcare to go around. We're going to need a private healthcare sector that is going to have to be paid for somehow. And here's my idea on how to pay for it. He was completely aware of the fact that the country was teetering on the brink of civil war. He was not an idiot, but he was able to look through that short-term crisis and think about the future and invest into that future, in the same way as the Capitec people did, in the same way as those RMB guys did when Barclays disinvested from South Africa in 1987, and there was a debt standstill, and South Africa couldn't pay its debts, and the country was properly bankrupt. And they went to the Anglo-American and bought not only Southern Life, but part of the deal was if they bought Southern Life, they had to buy FNB. And it created the basis for what is today a 360 billion rand company, an extraordinary success story in 3 single lifetimes. But it's that ability to make acquisitions, to do deals in difficult times that sets those that see through the difficulties and look into the future. Hans Rosling, one of the greatest futurists in the world, and if you haven't read Factfulness, I urge you to do so. He made the point using data to prove that we are so wedded to our beliefs and our biases and the beliefs that we share with our friends on social media and at gatherings, whether it be at breakfast or braais or wherever it is. You cannot make decisions when your mind is clouded by fear. If you are frightened because of the biases that you hold and your own concerns and your own angst and your own fear of failure in the future, you're never going to make proactive and positive decisions. And that is such a critical lesson for us, because in a country which is just feels like it's teetering on the brink of rage and anger all the time, it is often very difficult to look through the noise. I wish we were in a room together, because I would love to see by a show of hands how many of you would answer this question accurately. This is about statistics and data and facts. How many recessions has South Africa had over the past 50 years? Considering in the 1971, from then, we had oil crises and terrorism and student uprisings, and in South Africa, a civil war on the streets of the country, and dispossession and rage and anger, and this real sense of permanently being on the edge of failure. How many have we had? Now, when I ask people in a room, they will generally err on the side of caution. They'll go for B. They'll say, we've probably had 14 recessions. Well, we've had, it's bad, by the way, 1 every 6 years, effectively, a year of full contraction. We've had 9 over the last 50 years. You then test people to see whether or not what their politics is by asking this question. How many of those have occurred since 1994? And again, you see, people want to say 7 or 9 or more, because they feel as if the South African economy has been bumbling along and flatlining for decades. Well, in reality, there have been 2 recessions. If a full year of contraction is how we get to define a recession, 2008, not our fault, global financial crisis, and 2020, exacerbated by COVID, those are how many recessions we've had. Yet you look at graphs from the Bureau for Economic Research about business confidence, and business confidence is almost perpetually below a level of 50, which suggests a negative view on the economy. We perpetually live in an era of negativity, despite so much data which says there is opportunity, even in the noise and the chaos of South Africa, to take advantage. Then people say nothing changes. Nothing changes. Well, it does. It just moves quite slowly. Yes, Jacob Zuma's out of jail, but he's going back on trial once again. And he has to go back on trial, and he will try all kinds of legal means to not go on trial in April next year. But he did go to jail for contempt of court. And he was released, to my mind, illegally, against the advice of a board of medical professionals, the commissioner of correctional services, as his last-ditch effort to ingratiate himself to a particular faction within a political party, Arthur Fraser freed Jacob Zuma against medical advice. But he was jailed. And to my mind, and I was chatting to Lindiwe Mazibuko about this the other day, she is a former leader of the Democratic Alliance in Parliament, and she was just saying that it doesn't matter that he was released quickly. The fact that he was jailed sent a very, very important signal. We're seeing diversification of power resources, and more companies are coming to the fore, very keen to generate their own electricity to alleviate the burden on the national grid. The selling of SAA, whether or not it finally does go through or not, it is a huge breakthrough. The government is being willing to get rid of SAA. Portia Derby really struggling with the ports and with the rail networks because they've been so badly treated for so long. But she needs 100 billion rand to start improving South Africa's ports, which are an absolutely key asset if South Africa is going to compete globally. And the bankers I talk to are willing to stump up the cash, provided, of course, there is a business model that allows them to make a decent enough return. But this is under discussion, and it is happening. The splitting up of Eskom into its generation and into distribution and into the management business of Eskom is happening. It's all very late, but finally it is happening. For the president, who is battling more fires than any fireman has had to battle in their lives, he was beginning to make some quite substantial progress. And as Mike Tyson put it, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And he's had a number of punches, the most recent of which is the COVID punch. Oddly, it may, however, be the punch that gets him to shake his head, to get up off the canvas and to come out boxing more aggressively. And certainly we hope so. The level of the reforms that South Africa needs to be accelerated. We've got a great finance minister. I've had the privilege of spending hours with Enoch Godongwana. He's got a good head on his shoulders. And so far, so good in terms of the stuff that he is saying about the way in which the economy needs to work so that it can better serve all people in South Africa. He's got a medium-term budget policy statement coming up next week. We'll be watching that one with very close attention. Lesotho Kganyago, voted by his peers 2 years ago as the best Reserve Bank governor in the world. I read a speech of his the other day in which he was talking about the need to tighten the tighten the inflation target. And in that, he was bemoaning the fact that we just don't get enough done. And he was saying when everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. And I find that wisdom incredibly refreshing. For Edward Kieswetter, the boon is coming through in commodity sales, and he's collecting taxes and fixing the national tax collector, which was gouged out from the inside. As Shamila Buttoy also, and you'll see her in a second, found at the National Prosecuting Authority, and as Andre de Ruyter found when he arrived at Eskom, a lot of the skills, the talented people that had managed to keep the lights on, by and large, had left out of despondency and a loss of hope, as Shamila Buttoy discovered as well. But if you think that she's not making progress, that one of the most powerful figures in the governing party in the country actually has appeared in court again this week. As Magashule is gradually, the net is tightening around contracts and deals that were done that shouldn't have been done. 12 months ago, this did not seem possible. I take that as a huge bout of confidence. The technology that we all hate so much has been our savior. Imagine had this crisis happened in the era of the Nokia 3310, which was a lovely phone. It was a wonderful device, good long battery life. But had it happened in this era, we would have been well and truly in trouble. Luckily, it's happened in the digital age. Luckily, it's happened in an era when we can, although it's not ideal, meet like this rather than go out and take our lives into our hands and meeting face to face. Science has done remarkable things too, by the way. In this, never before in human history have so many people worked so hard and collaborated globally so hard on providing a mechanism to alleviate the symptoms and the devastating effects of COVID-19. It took 18 months, but the world is beginning to get access. We can debate vaccine apartheid. We can debate how the rich world has held on to vaccine doses at the expense of the poor world. But my goodness me, there is a huge level of breakthrough there. We've learned that leadership matters, and it matters who is running your company, it matters who is running your city, it matters who is running your country when that stuff hits the fan. You want to be well led. We also warned that, we've learned that, and Andy Grove says bad companies are destroyed by a crisis, good survive a crisis, great companies are defined by a crisis. I would argue the countries are like this as well. This crisis is going to shake out bad governance. It's going to shake out those who are not acting in the best interests of populations. And in the same way as good companies, I mean, Edcon in South Africa no longer exists, but there are companies coming to the fore. Aspen Pharmacare yesterday announcing huge developments at Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape, building great new facilities for export manufacture of things like vaccines, and hoping to have 1.3 billion doses from the currently 250 million doses that they can produce a year by 2024. Also, huge anesthetic production increases there too. So companies are taking advantage. So you can be half full and be the optimist, or half empty and be the pessimist, or you can just take it for what it is. Frankly, sometimes it doesn't look obvious to anybody what the solutions to a problem are. But there's a little note under my kids' music room, a light at school, the light switch, and I took a picture of it and I borrowed it. And it says, "Dear pessimists, optimists, and realists, while you were arguing about the level of the glass, I drank it. Regards, the opportunist." And I think that's where we need to focus, is on opportunity rather than everything that is getting us down. But Thomas Edison warns that it's missed by everybody because it's dressed in overalls and it looks like work. Often the opportunity isn't very pretty and it isn't very easy to attain. But that is the great opportunity for those who do seize the chances that are there, that are created for them in the midst of a crisis. So often it's those opportunities that are so hard to see, that are easy, that need to be seized. And we feel permanently on the edge of chaos. We do. I defy you to pick any point other than, perhaps a week when South Africa won the Rugby World Cup in 1995, and there was this great sort of Rainbow Nation moment. But for every other time, it just feels like prickly and dangerous and scary and messy and uncomfortable and noisy. But it's in that opportunity lies. And over many years of speaking to many people in business, it is that thing that keeps competition out and allows them the space, because they take the risk, to get in. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I've gone over time. I will slap myself on the wrist, but only once I have left the building. But I thank you very much for your time this morning, and thank you for listening to The Upside of Down.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Bruce. So much to take in there. That was really incredible. And thank you again for being our guest speaker this year. It was reaffirming, it was slightly scary, but it was also...
Got to be scary. It's got to be scary. I mean, hey, anyone who tells you that this is an easy place is a liar. Anybody who tells you that this is a broken place is also a liar. Look for the opportunity, please.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for that. And I will reiterate, if you do want to hear more from what Bruce has to say, I'd highly recommend this, The Upside of Down, his book. And catch him, of course, on The Money Show on 702 and Cape Talk. Thank you so much, Bruce. And thanks again to Sfiso as well, our PAMRO president, Dr. Sfiso Falala, for kicking things off with a welcome. We absolutely appreciate it. But now, time to begin our research presentations. Get ready for more learning, I'd say, and get your notepads and pens ready. I kid you not, I'm also ready to continue taking notes. At this point as well, I'd like to just encourage you to interact with our presenters by sending questions or your comments. Please do so in our live chat. And if we run out of time, we'll just make sure that any of our presenters will be able to get that information and they'll be able to respond to you in due course. So I'd like to introduce Bev Tegabassett and Stacey Grant. Bev is AVP in Business Development here in South Africa for Borderless Access, and Stacey Grant is the CMI Director for Unilever South Africa as well here in South Africa. Now, Bev, on one hand, is seasoned in market research and marketing. Now, at Borderless Access, she heads up the company's business development efforts in the African region. Now, she's passionate about the benefits of modern digital marketing insights and also solution-orientated growth for Southern Africa. She brings this full brain strategic thinking to the table, coupled with deep business knowledge for African markets gained from leading major client accounts from the region. And Stacey, on the other hand, has been with Unilever for 15 years. She has had the privilege of being part of some very fantastic contributions to both Unilever and its insights function. Most notably, she led the early work of their internal AI platform to set its foundations and secure business investment in the tool. And more recently, which has led to work in her galvanizing a sustainable identity for the global insights community. She's very fiercely patriotic to Africa and is energized by the unique challenges that are thrown her way daily, with demand and enable innovative and creative solutions. So this is definitely going to be a gem. It's titled The Evolution of Brand Humanization. They'll be looking at how borderless access and Unilever developed a very deeper understanding in their research. So over to you, ladies. Welcome, Bev and Stacey.
Thanks, Sia. People buy emotionally and they justify with logic. Decades ago, brands had a one-way communication with consumers, and with the invention of the mobile phone and the internet access, consumers began to voice their opinion and two-way communication started. Now, with the smartphone and social media and the internet of absolutely everything, success with purpose-led marketing relies on the ability to speak to your audience in a highly authentic way. And as a result, brands are becoming more and more humanized, with everything from a look and a feel to a personality and a tone of voice. And brands are able to customize their offerings to cater for the needs of their audience. And that requires a truly deep understanding of the target group from the very beginning. Digital evolution has seen consumer communication preferences evolve rapidly. This means that consumers are becoming increasingly accessible through technology at every level, and that their needs and their values are actually changing. The new way that we naturally connect with one another is beginning to challenge brands to come up with increasingly creative approaches, and this puts pressure on our research industry to adapt quickly to these changes and capture dynamic consumer behavior in real time. The idea is to leverage this technology to our advantage to meet a new level of human-centric insights that are real-time, richer, and faster. Since the internet started, no app has been as impactful as WhatsApp in fueling the growth of the internet, with the ability to reach right across any strata of society. The same is true across Africa, where we see that the majority of consumers are rapidly moving to digital platforms and they're available online. For many people on the African continent, WhatsApp is the very first app that they download, and it's the most used app. Today, we'll share with you how we're tapping into this popular medium using bot-enabled research to humanize our research approach. This enables us to collect both explanatory and rich exploratory insights, while at the same time creating a better and highly engaging experience for the respondent. And this improves the quality of the outcome. In recent months, together with Unilever, we conducted a study which pinpointed towards people's basic needs related to personal and household hygiene across Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. And at this time, I'd like to hand over to Stacey.
Thanks, Bev. I think before we talk a bit more about the study, it's useful to understand Unilever's background and where we've come from, because it talks directly to why we chose this topic for this study that we did with borderless access. So Unilever's been in Africa for over 100 years. We make many of the world's favorite brands, some of which you can see on the slide here. And every day, 2.5 billion people around the world use Unilever products, at least 500 million of which live in Africa. What this means is that we have a huge responsibility and daily opportunities to do good with our brands. What do I mean by doing good? Well, it's about serving people and ultimately helping to solve their problems. If we go back to our company's roots over 100 years ago, our founder, William Lever, started up his own business making sunlight soap. He was a social entrepreneur at heart, and what he did was he identified the need for a low-cost branded soap. Now, this was at a time when cholera and dysentery were really rife in Britain's Victorian slums, and his mission was to find a way to improve people's lives, but obviously grow his business at the same time. William Lever's bold and inspiring purpose was to make cleanliness commonplace. And today at Unilever, we continue to put people first and really strive to make sustainable living accessible to everyone. Next slide, please. So William Lever ultimately brought hygiene to millions of people who didn't yet know why hygiene was important. Little did we know that over a century later, we would again be reminded of the importance of hygiene. On this slide, I think, is, in my humble opinion, one of the best campaigns run globally and in Africa last year. It's a Lifebuoy campaign that we put up really quite soon after the pandemic broke out. And it was very, very well received by citizens across the world. I think because it felt quite sort of selfless in nature. So much so that you might not be able to see it, but at the very bottom of this advert, we actually list some of our competitor brands as options for people to use, because really what we were trying to do was promote hand washing at a time when it was never needed more. And so the brand really was secondary in this entire campaign. Our overall objective was really more around driving the habit that we knew would lead to saving lives. Next slide, please. So as Bev said a couple of months ago now, she reached out to me and she offered to partner on a piece of work that could help us better understand people in Africa and ultimately help us with our ambition to serve them better. And when we're thinking about, what sort of topics should we explore, given the context of COVID and given our mission that's over 100 years old around really making sustainable living commonplace, we came up with the idea of understanding hygiene a bit better. And yeah, it definitely felt like the right topic to cover. Bev mentioned it, WhatsApp highly penetrated across our key African markets. And really, it's become a trusted platform on which people very, very openly engage. I'm often quite surprised at just how openly people engage in the WhatsApp platform. Now, what was new in this case, because we've been using WhatsApp research for a number of years now, but what was new in the case of this pilot was the use of a chatbot. So taking away the traditional sort of manual human interventions we've used previously with WhatsApp research. And the question in the back of my mind was, would citizens be as trusting and as open and as conversational with this bot as they are with a real human? But really the part that I believed would be the most important and also the most challenging, and it's the challenge I set out to Borderless Access, was around reaching the true mass market or mainstream citizen. Now, certainly from most of the digital research I've done in the past, the method tends to skew to very urban, very young, and usually higher income citizens. So with this research and just understanding the demographic of Africa, I really wanted to impress on the Borderless Access team that we needed to reach the true citizen of Africa and not this kind of skew that might give us a skewed result. And I was impressed that we did manage to reach a representative sample, as you can see on the slide. Even more impressive was the number of responses we had in just a couple of days, and not just closed-ended yes-no responses, but what we'll see on the following slides is really rich responses that blended voice notes, videos, images, and qualitative as well as quantitative feedback. Okay, next slide. Right, so let's start to take a look at some of the findings. So we did it across South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and at a glance, it's not hard to see, and what's very clear is that there are very different hygiene challenges and needs across the three countries. From South Africa, where basic formats are reasonably accessible and penetrated and even adopted, and even some premium formats are quite reasonably penetrated. Down to then Nigeria, where water scarcity, as we'll see in the following slides as well, is a real concern. A third of the market rely on water alone to clean themselves. So here's the conundrum. You have a real scarcity of something that ends up being the only thing that often people are able to clean themselves with. Next slide, please. I'll leave this up for a bit so you can read it. I won't read it to you, but this quote from Kenya is one that really sat heavy on my heart. I think as somebody who's reasonably privileged, it's just always so sobering to get feedback like this from people, where access to water, access to basic hygiene, these, for me, should be, basic human rights, and there should be a level of dignity that is common. They certainly shouldn't be a luxury, and yet that is what they are to so many people in Africa. Next slide, please, Bev. Can hear some more sobering feedback from people this time in Kenya as well, just about how difficult it is to access the most basic of hygiene needs. And we're going to play a video just to show you the type of video feedback we get from people, which I think brings this point to life.
Hello guys, my name is Lucia Neke. I'm back again. I'm from Kenya and my email address is anekea8@gmail.com. I want to respond to question number 2 concerning the challenges we face in maintaining hygiene and cleanliness in our household. And according to me, the first challenge is lack of enough finances. You know, I stay in Nairobi city where you need to purchase everything. Like, let me say you need to purchase water, you need to purchase soap, everything that will help you maintain the hygiene in your household. But when you don't have enough money, it's hard for you. Yes, it's hard for me. Okay, the second challenge is lack of enough time. You know, when you are employed, like me, I go to work 6 days. I have one day off in a week. And in that one day off, I need to do all the chores in my household, of which is not easy. Yes, that's another challenge to me. Thank you.
So really some insights into some of the challenges around urbanization. And so often when we talk about urbanization, we see it as something good and something positive and something progressive for society. And yes, sometimes it is. But especially in places like Africa, urbanization actually comes with more challenges. It's often somebody moving out of a system where they're reasonably supported, where they have access to subsistence farming and to communities and to families who help each other and support each other. They move to then a city or sometimes what feels more like a slum, where they don't have great access to amenities, where suddenly the cost of living is so much higher. And of course, population density brings more hygiene concerns. So you hear some of that challenge coming through from that lady in Kenya. And sadly, the story very similar in Nigeria, as the next video will show.
Some of the problems I experience in maintaining hygiene in the household is one, water. Water is very important. Virtually everything in the house needs water. Well, washing the toilet, the bathroom, washing my own clothes, washing the plates in the house, needs water. And when there is no water, there is a problem because those things cannot be done. And the house I live in, there is no water system. Hence, I need to get the water from outside. And well, the circumstances are beyond my control. So there happens to be times when those places I used to get water from do not have water. In such scenario, I have to postpone anything that has to do with water in the house till the next day, or possibly whenever there is water close by. And then again, the issue of finance. Well, everything, prices of things are going up by the minutes. And given the fact that one is not a high earner, it poses problem. Getting the toll, detergent, soap, and all those stuff. When there is no money, is a big problem because you cannot get them. And then again, the fact that I'm not living alone poses a problem too. Well, we are human, we are bound to fail. So those are the challenges I do experience in maintaining hygiene in my household. Right?
Thanks, Bev. So there as well, you see, him talking about the challenge of accessing water, something that should be, there for everyone, coupled with the very real financial hardships that he's facing, and the fact that water isn't for free; it costs money that he doesn't have. So really, a perfect storm of challenges. And then moving to South Africa, while it seems, if you look at the quote. It seems that we go a bit higher up Maslow's hierarchy with sort of effort and time saving against tough cleaning coming through as a pain point. If you look at the video that we're going to show you now, you really start to see and feel the high level of inequality experienced in the country.
The situation here is too bad. As you can see, we are still using the pit toilet. Look. Hygiene-wise, we are struggling. We have no water. The water comes once a week or after 2 weeks. The situation is too bad. The taps are closed as I'm speaking. We have no water. So hygiene is not in a good condition, although we have nothing to do.
So what's powerful about that video, besides the very devastating message from this lady, which is that she still has a pit latrine toilet as well as very limited access to water. She says she has water coming in once a week. Can you imagine? I struggle when they cut our water off for a day. Imagine only having water once a week. But I think that video also brings to life the power of this research methodology and having a chatbot who's there always on and ready to engage when the respondent is ready to engage. This lady was outside in the area where she lives and was able to go online and share that video when she wanted to, when she was ready to, when it was something that she was ready to talk about. And that's so often what we miss in traditional research. We miss those moments when people are ready to engage because we engage them on our terms. We engage them when our field workers are wanting to go out and do the research. And they might not be in a space physically or mentally where they are wanting to talk about these things. So really very powerful demonstration of the methodology. Next slide, please, Bev. So this leads us to the point that there are some common factors across the country. So earlier on I highlighted the differences, but there definitely are some common themes coming through in terms of what's holding people back from better access to hygiene, from higher costs of products to poor quality products and a lack of government support. And so there's a very real need for affordable options, the need for these options to be available in the places where people are shopping, and then, of course, a plea for governments to do more to help people. Product quality is something that consistently emerges across our research, and it's so easy to start to think of people's financial struggles and the need for affordable solutions to then mean, well, let's just give people some cheap products. No. Actually, these are the people who need quality more than anyone else because they cannot afford the risk of getting that purchase wrong. So regardless of income brackets, we are serving human beings that deserve and want quality and dignified solutions. And in fact, I've just alluded to this, but given the exposure of mainstream citizens to harsher and often less hygienic living conditions, I would actually argue that some elements of product quality should be even higher for the products that we offer to them. So if we go to my last slide, there is a lot richer insight that we're still working through with the Borderless Access team. But just from our early analyses, we can definitely identify that there's a need for more affordable hygiene solutions, solutions that start to tackle the issue of water scarcity. That's something, the water scarcity issue is definitely something that's been left with us and that we're thinking more about. And when you think of affordability, different pack sizes, solutions around packaging free, which help us to offer then a wide range of price points and increase accessibility. These are the sorts of solutions that we start to think about and be inspired about when we get feedback like this through this sort of research. The water scarcity and the water quality problems are not new news per se. But hearing the feedback again and again, seeing the images shared, hearing from people with their videos, it has really struck us, and it's reminded us of the harsh realities that we simply can't ignore as we look to serve people in Africa. The good news is that our R&D teams across the world, and with our leading edge R&D facilities, we are already working through some of this. Water scarcity, water quality are challenges faced across many markets across the world. So it's a benefit of being in a multinational where you can learn from other markets. So we're working towards this, and I think we will just continue to invest, in research like this that helps us make choices. One of the things I tell people is I've traveled a lot around Africa. I've spent a lot of time before COVID in people's homes and in the trade. I can't wait to get out there again. But what I can tell you is that there's no shortage of opportunities to do more, to offer support, to innovate. And often our biggest challenge is in just prioritizing what we do with the limited resources that we have, so that we can efficiently bring the right solutions to the beautiful people of Africa that we serve. And research like this, especially research that can be commissioned very quickly at speed and we can get feedback real time, it plays an absolutely pivotal role in helping us to make the right choices. Back to you, Bev.
Thanks, Stacey. So what we've seen today is that bot-enabled research can indeed humanize the research approach by providing a personalized touch. Consumers are naturally engaged, and this makes the approach unintrusive, helping to bring the real consumer to life. Stacey's presentation showed us that this proves to be a better and highly engaging experience for the consumer, as you saw, and where the respondent is directly engaged and literally shares responses in their own words through voice notes and video. This is also a faster way of getting both exploratory and explanatory insights in one go across a wider and larger target group than you would typically do with qualitative work. We also see that this approach is cost effective, which really works for the job that we need to do across Africa. And clients can expect to invest a quarter of what they would typically spend on traditional research. This very rich qualitative approach can also be completed in half the time that traditional qualitative and then quantitative research would take. So there are a lot of benefits to this approach. And like Unilever, companies who market brands with meaning are often more successful, with a recent Nielsen study showing that 66% of consumers are saying that they really are willing to pay more for purposeful brands. So we believe in this market that we're at a pivotal juncture for brands to become more interactive in the way that they do research across Africa, and to leverage technology to better collaborate with Africans by tapping into their thoughts and opinions directly and without intrusion. And to the point where this work is attracting attention And this particular paper was recently awarded an ESO-MAR Gold First for research effectiveness for 2021, which Stacey and I were both humbled and delighted about, because in fact, we worked on this paper during the riots, and in many ways it was quite nice to have this distraction, but also quite moving to see the depth of the sharing and the challenges that people face. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was really, really insightful. Or should I rather actually say thank you so much to the award-winning ladies, Bev Tigger-Bassett, AVP in Business Development at Borderless Access South Africa, and Stacey Grant, CMI Director at Unilever South Africa. Really, really appreciate it. And to you watching, wherever you're watching us from, please do send in those questions or comments. If you have anything specifically that you'd like Bev and Stacey to look at, please do send it to us on our live chat and we'll make sure that they get it. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for a very quick coffee break. Please do join us again in the next 5 minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the second session and the second half of our day, the very first day of the PAMRO Virtual Conference. We're halfway there. Look, I'm a lot of things, but a great singer is not that. So let me just stop that reference right there. This is the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference, and so stoked that you are still with us. And I hope you're really enjoying it. Are you? Please let us know by participating in our live chat. Send us your questions and your comments. Or if you are on social media, please do join us by using the hashtag PAMRO21. And you can tweet us at PAMRO_org. That's at PAMRO_ORG on Twitter, just so that you can engage. If you've just joined us now, where have you been? We are sort of judging you for it, but never mind. Join in on the party. We absolutely appreciate it. Another quick thank you goes out to our sponsors for making today and this conference possible. So thank you so much again to Borderless Access, to DSTV Media Sales, to Nielsen, to Telmon Ornico, Plus 94 Research, and Ipsos. Before we continue with the rest of our day, actually, here's another quick word from one of our sponsors. And so right now it's time to look at our next presentation by Noah Makolwa, who's the digital manager for Nielsen Media South Africa. Now, Noah is also responsible for the Nielsen digital client leadership of global, regional, and local clients within the South African market. He's an astute digital marketer who has honed his skills with previous roles in digital out of home, e-commerce, marketing, and sales. Now, he's going to be giving us a presentation titled Millennials and Gen Z, poised to drive crypto revolution in Africa. Do not start, if you're a boomer, to roll your eyes at trying to understand these complex and cool millennials, because I will personally take offense. So let's get started. Noah, over to you.
Thank you, Sia. Really appreciate the platform. And I guess thank you to everyone who's listening in from home or wherever you may be. It's a very interesting conversation that I believe we're going to be having here today. And we'd like to present some findings that are based on some research which we've done. So the paper is simply titled Ready for Crypto, Millennials and Gen Z are poised to drive the crypto revolution in Africa. So at Nielsen, we like answering the question, what's next, right? And we come out with all these bold things, then we say them. And I'm going to do the same right here now and say, Africa is poised to be the next frontier of global development and economic growth. But in order for this to happen, we've got some issues to solve. We've got some problems, Nyana, and I believe some of these, in fact, all of the presentations before me have touched on some of the issues we face, from load shedding to lack of water or access to water and clean running sanitation and the likes thereof. Unfortunately, though, or maybe fortunately, it seems that this job might have to fall on the shoulders of Africa's youth. Now, unlike the people of fictional Wakanda, we're going to have to do this without vibranium. Luckily for us, we've embraced the next best things, which are cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, and the internet. We have got no illusions about the type of challenges that we face as Africa. The ones that we think, or rather the ones that I'd like to talk about and the ones that we think Africa's youth can essentially start solving right now are with regards to exchange rate policies, high inflation rates, currency devaluations, the sanctions, unemployment, fraud and corruption, as well as the intra-Africa trade, which is so very limited when compared to other continents, and how well they are able to trade with each other and build wealth amongst each other. Now, already you can see a need for decentralized monetary system or a non-regulated sort of money system to already counter some of these problems. But we understand that these solutions, or rather these challenges, won't be resolved by a single solution, and it won't also happen overnight. But it is good to know that we can find certainty in certain times through measurement. Now, measurement points to a unique continent. Measurement points to the youngest continent. Africa is the continent with the youngest population worldwide. 40% of Africans are below the age of 15. And on that graph there on the right, you get to see these cohorts, 0 to 4 years at 200 million people in 2020, 5 to 9 years, almost 180 million people, and 10 to 14 years. These three cohorts make up 40% of Africa's population. We have a median age that is also very, very low, 19.7 years. And when I showed this to some of my colleagues, they called this the death graph. I don't really agree with them. Yes, it does show how fewer we become the more we age. I mean, looking at my son's age mates, 0 to 4 years, he's 2 years old, compared to my age mates, there's only about 80 million of us in Africa versus the 200 million of them. And I think that actually tells a tale of hope for the future, as opposed to us calling this the death graph. Now, on average, the male and female population in Africa lives between 62 and 65 years respectively. But that might just change. See, the reason why that graph looks the way it does is because we have a low life expectancy at birth, caused mostly by the lack of access to healthcare. On the other side, though, we have a nice and very high fertility rate in Africa, and that keeps contributing to the low median age. Now, as time goes on, the life expectancy is also anticipated to increase as we develop and build schools and roads and healthcare centers and hospitals and the likes thereof. And I think it's very, very interesting to look at how our population over the years, when looking from 1950 all the way through to 2020, how that's grown. I mean, between 2000 and 2020, our population has risen by more than 500 million people. Now, that leaves us second only to Asia, which still sits there with about 4 billion people. So this growth path, I think, is one that speaks volumes about the potential we have to do better than where we currently are sitting. Yes, progress has been made. However, there's still work to be done. I'm glad to say some of the work that is underway, it involves the African Continental Free Trade Area or Free Trade Agreement. Now that is anticipated to essentially increase intra-Africa trade from 17% in 2017 to about 52% by 2023. COMESA, or the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, that seeks to become a monetary union by 2025. The uptake of crypto in Africa is a natural progression following the successful rollout and implementation of m-payment solutions throughout the continent. These solutions enable financial freedom and security for millions who may struggle with conventional retail banking services, whether that be the availability of credits or the function of owning and managing an account. In addition, socioeconomic factors are at stake to encourage the spread of crypto. So younger generations are more connected and more willing to engage with this type of currency. So it's a natural progression for me to be doing my banking via FNB's e-wallet, for example. And the next thing would be, a crypto-inspired app that functions very similarly to what the e-wallet system would work like. So we then went and did a data deep dive. We looked at the buzz around crypto across Botswana, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Tanzania, and Uganda for the period August 2020 to July 2021. We covered social media, blogs, forums, news sites, even some newspapers as well. And when the themes emerged from our monitoring, we then decided to include 14 coins, which were part of the themes from the generic crypto search to the search to enrich the data and see, what we can pick up from that. Now, these 7 countries accounted for more than 6 million conversations over the 12 months from August 2020 to July 2021. So we have noticed some spikes, of course, in conversation in February 2021, as well as May 2021. I'm not too sure what happened in February, but I remember in May, Elon Musk tweeted that he wouldn't be investing further in Bitcoin due to concerns over its energy usage. That tweet alone shaved hundreds of billions of dollars in the value of the entire crypto market in a single day. And that just goes to show how powerful the conversations that we are having on these platforms are, and how these conversations essentially have got real world consequences and real world benefits as well. Now, other themes that popped up in this conversation but weren't part of the search include the terms blockchain. Think of blockchain as distributed public ledgers that record transactions. NFTs was another theme that came out there. Short for non-fungible tokens, which are built using the blockchain technology and are primarily used by digital creators to sign their work and approve ownership. Other themes include banking, mining, which is how some people get a hold of their cryptocurrencies, as well as tax, because some governments within Africa have decided that, if you are going to have this digital currency as an investment, they're going to tax you for it. So that's what all these conversations are about. And that's just a summary of the themes around cryptocurrency in Africa. Now, when we start to look at the demographics and try to build a picture of the people taking part in this conversation, I guess the title of this paper says it all, right? The crypto conversations skew young, but surprisingly male as well, with 2/3 of the entire population identifying as male. Obviously, the cohorts 18 to 24 and 25 to 34 are the most engaged in this conversation, leaving 35 to 44s, 35 plus, with only about 15% of the conversation there. So 85% of the conversation belongs to millennials as well as Gen Z. Now, when we look at what these guys are interested in, some familiar themes emerge. The categories music and audio may be surprising, as well as celebrities and entertainment news. When you're thinking, cryptocurrencies, why would the interest be music and audio and celebrities and entertainment news? But when you consider Akon's plans about building a futuristic city in Senegal, and he just happens to be a celebrity and a musician, that starts to make a little bit more sense. Interestingly enough, there's also family and parenting as an interest. It ranks very, very high there, which, given our discussion on the fertility rate and the very low median age of South Africa, of Africa, you'd see why family and parenting might be something that's necessary for even 24-year-olds and 18-year-olds to be interested in. No surprise as to the devices used in this conversation. Mobile phone, about 86% there of that conversation taking place on phones, with connected devices accounting for about 11% of the devices used, and also by operating system. So you can see there, obviously Android, a huge, huge stake of it all, followed by iOS, and the other brackets this time even overpowers Windows. And that also speaks something about where that particular operating system may be going. Now, the next slide should come as no surprise when we look at the cryptocurrency conversations by country. Nigeria with a huge share of the conversation, taking up 4.1 million of that entire 6 million convo pieces, with the remaining 6 countries having to share 2 million of that conversation. When we look at the perceptions online, we see that essentially both sentiment and feelings are largely neutral. However, we monitored some 24,000 conversations that expressed joy, a further 12,520 that expressed sadness, maybe from Elon Musk's tweets that brought down the value of Bitcoin in May, who knows? But essentially, they are really wide-ranging. There's some disappointment, some confusion, some fear, some surprise, some anger, some disgust as well. But largely very, very neutral. When we compare the conversations by the different coins, Bitcoin by far is the most conversed about, with 63% of the total conversation being about Bitcoin. Ethereum, 10%, Dogecoin coming through at 7.5% as well. Interestingly enough, I didn't think we'd see the top 5. I didn't think we'd see a coin in the top 5 because until I had to do this research, I had never even heard of that particular cryptocurrency, despite Acon being a global name. Now the conversations take place all over. We've got Sean Giftslabber on Twitter who says, why are we still struggling to make cross-border payments on our continent of Africa for work? We pay the taxes, we do everything by the book, yet dololo. It's time we up our cryptocurrencies game. Who out there are getting paid in Bitcoin or other hashtag crypto? Tabiso comes through on Twitter as well. We see Lebogang Kunene taking this conversation to LinkedIn, saying blockchain is the answer to a lot of problems Africa is facing. Let's embrace it to bring change. Hashtag blockchain. DJ Spoo on Facebook says, if you want to get rich in the next 5 to 10 years or longer, you don't have to have a degree, know much about money, investments, or even cryptocurrency, but strive to own as much Bitcoin as possible. And that meme that is on the right there is taken from Instagram. Son, one day you'll grow up to be a man, but dad, I'm 23. Yes, but you don't own any Ethereum. Will that be the level that's determined, that we use to determine manhood now? No more trips to the mountain, maybe? We'll see about that. One thing I can say though, is that Africa may have its challenges and problems, but there is hope to be enjoyed in the courage and determination of its youth. And given our status as the youngest continent, could this be the ace up our sleeve? Don't take my word for it though.
Hi, my name is Mashat Mofla, 20 years old. I'm studying at Wits University. Cryptocurrency is an online digital currency. It's not different from the other currencies that we use. So like the USD, etc. So cryptocurrency can be used to sell and buy goods either online or physically, and cryptocurrency can also be used to buy and sell stocks on the market. And yeah, we have types of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, the U, Bitcoin price, name them. So I'm ready for cryptocurrency.
Hi, my name is Sandy Swanyati. I am 26 years old. What I know about cryptocurrency is that it is a digital currency which is designed to be a medium of exchange, just like physical money. We've got the dollar, the rand, the naira, so many other different currencies. Yeah, it is designed to be a medium of exchange. It is stored in a computerized database. It fluctuates in value. just like normal money. So it's money, but digital form of money. And given that we are moving to the digital age, it will become more popular and it will end up being the only medium of exchange. Well, there's in a couple of years. So yeah, I'm ready for crypto. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Sean Sibanda, and I am 22 years old, and I go to the University of Johannesburg. What do I understand about cryptocurrency? I understand that in cryptocurrency, there's Bitcoin, which is a form of cryptocurrency. And most people use Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to generate digital money. And yes, I am ready for cryptocurrency.
My name is Inyiko Ngobeni. I am an 18-year-old student at the University of Johannesburg. I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Optometry. So what do I think of cryptocurrency? When currency is a general system of money in a particular country, and the word crypto means concealed. So I am assuming that cryptocurrency is a general system of computerized, concealed money in the global market. Even though I don't have a proper understanding of cryptocurrency, but as we move more and more into the digital age, I am ready for cryptocurrency. I'm Nobilen Dabandaba, I'm 25. Cryptocurrency is an online or digital currency which is secure through cryptography. Unlike your country-specific currencies such as the Rand or USD, the cryptocurrency is secure through a decentralized system. Famous coins include, amongst others, Dogecoin, your Bitcoin, and even Ethereum. In recent times, crypto has been widely endorsed by USD billionaire Elon Musk and has seen countries such as El Salvador allow it as a legal tender. Yes, I am cautiously ready of cryptocurrency.
Hi everyone, I'm Levo Koneni, 28 years of age. I'm a strategist by profession. Cryptocurrency is a digital currency that works using blockchain. I'm ready for cryptocurrency. Are you?
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Noah. I did encourage our viewers to get their notepads ready. There was a lot there, and wasn't our session. No, we really
was insightful.
We really, really appreciate it. Keep up the good work at Nielsen. Now, moving on, before we just go straight to our next speaker, here's a quick word from one of our sponsors. And please keep your questions and comments coming in for each one of our speakers. We will be sending them to the speakers for them to answer, and they will respond in due course. Now, let us carry on with the day. Now, where do I even begin with our next speaker? He's an entrepreneur, he's a visionary, he's a risk taker, and an all-round cool guy. So cool that he was a winner of the Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award presented to him by, wait for it, President Nelson Mandela. Oresti Patricios is the CEO of Ornico, the leading brand intelligence company in Africa, providing reputation, media, advertising, and brand research. Oresti is a man with a plan who pushes boundaries, challenges the status quo, and evangelizes growth in Africa. So his presentation today is titled Evolution of Community Media. Ornico has looked into the term community, and Oresti is here to share their findings. So Oresti, over to you.
Wow, Sia, what an introduction. So thank you very much. So welcome everyone, and it's so cool. Unfortunately, it is a virtual conference. It will be so cool to see everyone at this physically, but it will happen, I'm sure, pretty soon. So what is it about this evolution of community media, and what is the objective that I'm trying to portray around this evolution of community media? Number one is, a lot of the times as brands, as researchers, etc., we kind of measure and we monitor and we evaluate big media, mainstream media, because it's actually much easier to do that. It's much easier to measure big media. But really, what are brands needing to look at, and what are their alternates, and how can they differentiate themselves within the crowd? And sometimes community media is where it's at. But again, what is community media? And what is the definition of community media? Because as an industry, we've evolved quite dramatically, and COVID has also separated and created huge differentials in what really is happening with the customer journey. So what new solutions can we find? And I'm not saying in this paper that I'm actually giving any solutions. All I'm saying is, let's start talking about it, and let's start thinking about how our brands, how media can evolve. I just want to just talk about some of the things that I've spoken about in the last couple of years, and how we've and where my thinking ultimately is. In 2006, I had a paper on how Africa and how we can evolve and actually tell our own stories. America has CNN, the UK has Sky News and BBC, we have Al Jazeera, we have Russian television, but as Africa, we don't have these powerful mainstream media talking and giving us a sense of stories. And what I spoke about 2006 is, how do we use the internet? How do we use storytelling and some of the social media to be able to tell our stories of Africa? And I spoke about Iroko and how Nollywood is telling their stories utilizing YouTube, and how they're thinking big. And it's amazing to see how Iroko, in some cases, specifically with Nigerian movies, and how they're thinking big and telling our stories around that. In 2009, as Bruce said, if you've done an MBA, you need to just talk about it. I did my thesis on social media. And really, I spoke about how this is really, even though it was small at the time, how this is really going to revolutionize brands and the conversations brands will have on social media. 2014, and thank you, Noah, that was really interesting. I spoke about Bitcoin and the blockchain. Really, social media, we can see a trend that is happening in Iroko, and utilizing the internet and some of those stories on the internet. We can see how brands are evolving into that. Brands haven't really utilized the blockchain and Bitcoin at this stage specifically to be able to do these transactions across a continent. But I think we're just about, as Noah showed, just about poised to do that right now. In 2017, I spoke about artificial intelligence and how our brands can actually use artificial intelligence. And in 2019, I spoke about 5G and its effect on advertising, specifically that there's so much data, but also 5G enabling things like autonomous cars, and how autonomous cars can now create a vehicle as being our lounge, and how our brands been able to engage with the consumer while we're sitting in these driverless cars. So now I'm going to start putting our minds across and saying, okay, let's talk about and how is the evolution of community media really happening. So quickly, I'm just really going to talk about what is and what are community media, the power of this new community media and how we define it as Ornico and how we should be defining it, and then ultimately looking into the future and the fall of distrust in mainstream media, but also how some of our big brands like MultiChoice, DSTV, SABC, and some of the other big brands across the continent, and how they can create this community media and start engaging in it. So my understanding of community media and how do we evolve it. So community media can take all forms of other conventional media such as print, radio, television, web-based, and mixed media. So community radio is particularly widespread across the world, with specifically radio stations being founded to inform their listeners on issues that are important to their community. And I think that's where we really need to we need to look at community media. Is community media can be any of forms of media that functions as a service by that particular community. It's the rise of all kinds of alternative, oppositional, participatory, collaborative media practices that are developed in the journalistic context of community media, we media, citizens media, grassroots media. So in essence, community media are media of the people, by the people, for the people, no matter what form, theme, audience, or practice they ultimately take. And I think that's what we need to really look at, and is how can brands be involved with that particular community media, because there's not that much noise within that space. So what are those types of community media? Number one, the obvious community media is, at the end of the day, local newspapers, industry-specific newspapers, things like trade magazines such as Cigar Aficionados and Cinema Lovers. You can go into television in terms of regional television stations, industry-themed TV stations, religious, state-owned, and then again on radio being the regional, themed, and religious. But it's much more than that. And how do these online communities, and how those online communities creating these community media, and why do we as African brands need to think about a community media in a local context? Why can it not be a global context? Why can our brands not engage like Iroko has across the different continents, and not just within Africa or within our particular countries? And how do these online communities, so in order to be able to do that, we need to kind of understand how these online communities start building and start growing. Firstly, with the culture, I mean, community media represents all types of cultures, not just the traditional ones. Brand and industry cultures are extremely important for the survival of companies and industries. And I think really those community media really start evolving around particular cultures, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But also the need. Brand communities exist to serve the needs of those particular people and have an interest or participate in them, whether it's news, content, voices, diversity that's not depicted in the mainstream media. And I think at one point, Red Bull did a phenomenal job of creating a community media around extreme sports and having those conversations around extreme sports. And they had a really particular purpose. And how brands evolve around that, or join a particular community media that is already there and be able to join that media and differentiate themselves becomes really, really important. And as Stacey and Bev were talking about, is really that whole purpose-led communications. And I think that's really when we need to kind of check to see where our communities are. And communities are built around a social identity. So members are building around that social identity, specifically around a particular interest groups and particular sometimes ideologies, etc. And community media are really, in terms of how do we build from this powerful community building, captivating storytelling. And we see a lot of the times these trends, these ideas for brands are coming out of podcasts, blogs, and social media platforms. And often, not often out of the mainstream media, the media that we find easy to measure, the media that we find easier to do our programmatic buying and just kind of jump onto that into that, but some of the other platforms that are providing huge insights, huge trends, huge ideas that we can actually jump on and start having a conversation around. And really sometimes, and I saw this fantastic article actually yesterday by Walk, and really they were talking about often brands are looking at advertising in the mainstream linear television or even currently on social media. And Ornico did a fantastic social media landscape report survey and shows you where brands are actually looking at advertising. And sometimes at mainstream, there is an investment gap. But if you're looking at podcasts and online radio and some of the community conversations and the community media, it differentiates and actually gives a much better return on investment. In fact, according to Walk, podcasts are found to be undervalued by 40 billion, with the greatest opportunities for advertisers among the audiences of 16 to 24, middle earners, and those educated until the age of 16. And Africa being, as we saw earlier from Noah's presentation, has Africa been this young continent, he has a great opportunity for brands to look at those niched community media in not the terms that we always understand, but in the terms that I'm talking about now. And as I said, we can often see blogs and forums, and this is where we start seeing the trends that are happening. Some of the conversations on community topics. So if we're not monitoring it, if we're not researching these particular blogs, these particular forums, we start missing out as brands. And it doesn't have to be a big brand, Unilever or Target brands. It could be a niche brand within some of those big brands. It could be baked beans at the end of the day, and how that product can start evaluating and understanding what are the trends and how they can jump onto those particular platforms. So you understand those daily trends, having those conversations on community topics, and having real opinions by everyday people, and brands really being able to engage with those everyday people, and kind of starting to build that social identity and feeling of belonging. I'm not sure if anybody actually saw Tito Mboweni and Koo kind of engaging in a very funny Twitter conversations. And again, that you start getting fantastic conversations going around that. And here's a big case in point that I'm sure most of us had followed. And that's the Wall Street Best case against GameStop and AMC. And millennials, we're talking about millennials and how they needed to get out of the system, and engage and get into the players where private equity and hedge funds are in, and they kept out of that space. So really, the conversations were happening within some of these not the mainstream, but really outside of that. And there was a conversation about revolutionizing the real retail investing, and also on Wall Street Bets, which is a sub forum of Reddit. They were having these conversations, and they were seeing the hedge funds shorting GameStop and AMC, and they wanted to get in on this game of investing, but they couldn't afford being in the mainstream. So Wall Street Bets was one of the community spaces that they could actually have a conversation around, and they all agreed that they're actually going to not sell it short, but actually buy into GameStop and AMC and turn this around. And that particular community really turned the investing around, and some of the smaller players within that really made some big money on that, and some of the big players lost money within that space. Again, podcasts are areas that you can see and feel where there's trending discussions, but also it's amazing when they bring in people to have these conversations. There's some well-hidden advertorial, sometimes planned, sometimes accidental. And again, brands can really play a huge role and engage within that podcast, Spotify community with. And I know and I understand sometimes brands feel a little bit uncomfortable about it because conversations, and I'll really talk about Elon Musk's conversation and how sometimes it can go off topic and scary for brands. But really, there's no censorship and there's some real impact. But if you understand your community within that community media, it can be really very engaging conversations. But again, it's up to us as researchers to be able to give our brands information and content and audience measurement and monitor those brands and see what are the conversations, what are the personalities, and which of the brands within our clients can actually engage within those communities, and can they engage in the communities, and what is the personality of that community, of the brand, and can we match that up. And as a fantastic case of the Joe Rogan experience and Elon Musk having that conversation, and it was a very uncensored, real-time conversation. And I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan, but I really listened to this podcast, and I got some really insightful information about Elon Musk, Tesla, and where they're going, where he's going on batteries, where he's going in terms of SpaceX. And it was fascinating in terms of those conversations. But Joe Rogan and Elon Musk were having a completely uncensored, genuine human conversation. And actually, Elon smoked marijuana live on that show. And yes, as brands, and can you imagine the shareholders of Tesla must have hit a complete panic. But Tesla is a challenger brand. It was for them. For him. It was kind of cool. You can't really have Mercedes-Benz or Volkswagen actually having the CEO and coming onto Joe Rogan's show and actually smoking marijuana. But for Elon Musk, being that challenger brand really was a huge win for him. Not initially, in that short term, a lot of people sold his shares. There was a huge outcry, but it kind of turned around, making him a little bit of a hero. And he became a sensation through memes, not only from Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and a whole lot of others. And people follow his every word at the end of the day. So how can our brands, and I know this is an extreme case, and there's not as many extreme cases, and there's a lot more middle of the road cases that some of the brands can actually look at engaging in and involving themselves into some of this community, media. YouTube, and I'm going to show you on some of the research that we've done on the social media landscape report. I think brands have missed a huge opportunity on engaging on the community channels of YouTube. Create those hashtags, create that sense of community. And there's a new way of delivering information. And specifically in terms of where consumers are starting to build this huge distrust of mainstream media, having this independent journalism without borders, becoming global brands, utilizing things like YouTube. Again, breaking points case where guys like Crystal and Sega became the #1 political podcast when they left NBC, and Breaking Points has gained 500,000 subscribers in 1 month, because here they have some real opinions. And there's a lot of these. I'm just utilizing this because it's a big case study, but having real opinions and real news, no censorship, a feel of belonging. I mean, I used to be a huge advocate of the Young Turks. And again, some of these niche publications can change and they can become mainstream. And I think the Young Turks was a very challenger brand, was a very small community media station, a YouTube channel that was really talking about stuff that the mainstream media wasn't really talking about. I think they've become very mainstream at this point, but it's really interesting to get some of those conversations and engaging as brands. But again, like I said, as researchers, and specifically in Africa, to find those niche community media and really being able to talk about it. And again, on Twitter, creating a sense of community within particular channels, hashtag, whether they channels on food, whether they channels, and TikTok does a fantastic example of how they can build channels and a sense of community within those channels. And again, TikTok, in terms of our social media landscape report that we had, shows how undervalued it ultimately is and how underutilized it is by brands. And here's a great opportunity for them to really play in that space. And with, again, like I said, real content, a real sense of community. Bitcoin also has their own particular channels, as we spoke about. And here, they start building their own particular cult. Bitcoin sometimes, as Noah showed, and how much conversation is around Bitcoin, is it sometimes becomes almost a religion, and not all brands can actually jump onto that particular community. But brands that align themselves with technology, some of the smaller banks have a huge opportunity to kind of align themselves around these kind of conversations and actually get the most out of, just to go back to that, get the most out of their community engagement and their conversations on these niche medias, because they're not competing with any of their competitors at the end of the day. And I think that and they can talk about, and they're not just talking about stuff in sound bites. The brand can sit there and talk about it in 15-minute slots, 20-minute slots. In Elon Musk's case, it was a 3-hour slot. And you can talk about it instead of just being cut off halfway through when you're really trying to give your point, being able to really have your own conversation and engage with that particular community. And here's the interesting conversations that we really had when we did our research to brands and digital agencies. And one of the questions we asked was, on which platform is your company or client currently on? And by far they said that they're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter, which is kind of quite cool. And I understand that. And to do advertising on Facebook or even Instagram is very easy in terms of programmatic buying. And I understand that those click-throughs make it very, very simple. But we need to understand as a brand, is it the right place to be on? Where are ultimately where are the consumers? So when we looked at the TGI, and we did a joint venture here with TGI, when we looked at TGI and where are the consumers in that digital space, in the social media space, where are those consumers and where they're engaging? Actually, it was WhatsApp, YouTube, and then only Facebook. Whereas if you look at the previous slide, as brands, Facebook sat at really number 5. So what is it and where is it that brands are missing out of to try and engage with consumers on the space that consumers actually are? And it was really cool to see Stacey's and Bev's presentation, that they were engaging so heavily in a research way, but it can also be in a community way on WhatsApp. It doesn't have to only be on research, although that was a really cool opportunity. But how can we engage if all the consumers, and specifically in Africa, a lot of consumers on WhatsApp? How do we do it? And I know and I understand that it's difficult. But again, I think it was Thomas Edison that Bruce was talking about. Opportunities are there, but it's the hard work that counts. So we as brands, let's put in that hard work, find those community mediums. We as media monitoring companies like Ornico actually monitor it, provide data, provide insights to the brand, so it makes them feel a lot more comfortable to actually engage with those community media. Again, in our research, we asked what returns has social media brought to your brand? And social media brought brand awareness, sales, customer insights, inbound traffic, improved search rankings, and greater appeal. And I think all that not only on social media, but I think on those community media specific podcasts, particular channels of YouTube can bring all that. Brand awareness, can bring customer insights, can even, because of the much bigger engagement, can bring much better sales. And I think that's what we're doing. That's why we're engaging with our consumers, is really looking at our return of investment and seeing how we can build our brand awareness in order to be able to get better sales. And I think it's important to see when this research of specifically American American audiences, but it wasn't only. There was Kenyan, it was South African, it was across many different countries. And there's a huge, and we all know that there's a huge distrust in mainstream media. In fact, 79% of people said they don't trust mainstream media any longer. 56%, they agree that journalists are purposefully trying to mislead audiences. And I think this, and it's been hugely prevalent during COVID. And I think a lot of people went onto mainstream media, the CNNs of the world, etc., and were watching what was happening on COVID, and were getting their information, and television watching shot through the roof. I think things have, a lot of people are mistrusting that information. Not only, I'm not saying about COVID, I'm talking about a lot of the information that is happening, that mainstream media are really chatting about, according to this research. And when you look at this, Finland and Kenya have the most trust of their media across all conversations, and UK, France, and US has got the least conversations of their across mainstream media. So again, where can brands look at? How can they engage with those community media? And I'm not saying ever just replace community media. I think community media and mainstream media will and should coexist and not replace, because I think each of them do have their own nuances and their own absolute importance in this. But I also think when we're looking on my final screen, when we're looking at the growth of online communities, brands need to be there where online communities ultimately are, because the growth of online community, specifically on the participation, is growing steadily. And you can see this in 2017, it was 72, 2018, 74, and 2019, it's 76. And I guarantee you, with us and the customer journey being changed during lockdowns, I guarantee you 2020 and 2021 will be hugely different in terms of community participation and engagement. And that's where I really think that brands can have a great opportunity to be able to engage in that space. So guys, thank you very much. I think it's up to all of us as researchers, as media monitoring companies, but as brands, to be able to engage in these community, in terms of these community media, and not just small community medias, but some of these community media can be really huge at the end of the day. So thank you very much.
Let's face it, TV isn't going anywhere. It's going everywhere.
Do you, boo-boo?
And there's only one way for you to get there. DSTV Media Sales. We go all out every day to get your brand out to the over 11 million households enjoying DSTV and GoTV's world-class local and international entertainment. From TV to video on demand and streaming to digital, you name it, we do it all. Through innovative communication solutions customized to suit every brand and product. Whether you're looking to sponsor a great program, activate your brand with a sporting event, or place your product in a top show, we'll help you make your brand famous. Interested? Then contact us today. Because when it comes to media, we're all over it. DSTV Media Sales.
Thank you so much for that, Oresi. Really, really, really awesome stuff. Oresi Patricia, CEO of Ornico, and according to me, all-around cool guy. So actually, no pressure, Oresi, but I think all-around cool guy would look really, really amazing on your LinkedIn. Use it, don't use it. Hey, you know what? I've just thrown it out there. So what's your best takeaway from Oresi's presentation? Let us know on social media by using the hashtag PAMRO21, or you can also tweet us at PAMRO_org. As the day continues, another reminder though, if today's engagement is appealing to you in a different type of way, then you'd like to get involved further, please do, because we'd absolutely appreciate you as a PAMRO member. Please visit the website on www.pamro.org/member-registration. We'd really, really appreciate it. And keep that engagement coming on through the live chats as well. Any of your comments or questions can be fielded and sent to the various speakers today. So time now to head over to Joe Mbugua, Head of Tools and Tech in East Africa at Saracen Media in Kenya. So Joe is a very driven individual with a passion for all things tech. He uses innovation to lead, to improve efficiencies and help his organization and clients stay ahead of their competition. We're about to see someone with 10 years experience in designing communication strategies and media planning and 2 years in the tools and tech space. So please welcome Joe as he presents measurements of influencer ROI. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Sia. Morning, everyone. So I'll just like to start with a story in terms of my journey and also how basically I ended up sort of as a head of tools and tech. Media was very redundant for me and needed something else that could challenge me, especially in terms of how we look at influencers, because in the Kenyan market, it was very manually done. So I decided to just go down that road and also create other products that makes client stuff easy for them. Cool. So I'll give you a little bit of background in terms of where we're at in the influence market, especially from a global point of view. By the end of 2021, we'll be seeing a total investment around $5 billion going into this industry. And it's fast growing as compared to last year when it was around 9 billion. So that figure is basically just climbing up. Globally, this number keeps continuing growing. We have over 14 million listed influencers globally. So again, this kind of investment and also being in this kind of space needs basically tools that can actually help you sort of manage this type of view. Now, what also led us into this, and also this unanswered, there were so many unanswered questions, especially in this influencer space, that most of our clients kept asking, or rather when you're in meetings where you have competing agency, and these sort of questions kept coming up. So how can I automate my influencer process? The automation process is clearly becoming one of the key things, especially from my industry, and how we can automate some of these processes to make them faster. How can we remove subjectivity from this process as well? How can I ensure that the influencers are brand safe, which is a big question most of our clients are actually asking. Are the influencers selected authentic, and are they relevant to my brand? Who's influential for my brand and the audiences, or even the category that they're going to be talking on behalf of? How can I identify the right influencers/creators? How do we validate how do we validate influencer suggestions for most of our clients? Is my influencer campaign working? Are there ways to make the influencer marketing more measurable in real time as well? And the biggest one is usually, especially on ROI. And most of the time you go into boardrooms, or even when you're going into MVP meetings, what really happens is the influencer budget tends to be cut because it's really hard to justify the ROI. So again, traditionally, and even still now, it's a really painful process, because what you have is manually done stuff, especially for my market, where we super heavily rely on influencers to basically send us their backend for this. I mean, on the screen, you can actually see some sample of the stats that you get, and it's supposed to make some headway in terms of then how can you create meaningful insights from this. Sometimes it becomes very hard because some of these stats keep changing, and then it's very hard to draw a thin line in terms of what's working. Again, there's also the cost of the reporting. Some questions that we usually keep getting around on our end is, you have to wait until the end of the campaign to get a report, yet we need to streamline the campaign before it ends, so that we can course correct if there are any issues. Has my campaign started? This is one of the worst questions that I hate, especially when you're working with older people who don't have access to some of these social platforms. The reports are mostly screenshots, which is a very old school way. Was the campaign effective? Especially with these screenshots, sometimes it's very hard to analyze these campaigns. Are the influencers posting the right message? Sometimes since you're getting the report at the end of the month, what happens is you're unable to course correct before either an influencer messed up or influencer didn't post the right thing. And then begs the other question is, did they even understand the brief? So we began as such, just to try and figure out who's the right partner we can actually partner within this space to help us understand some of these questions. We looked within the network and we stumbled upon
Tagger, the #1 influencer marketing and social listening platform used by the top global brands and agencies.
Tagger's user-friendly platform gives you direct access to accurate real-time social data, allowing you to plan, activate, and learn from influencer campaigns and strategies. With Tagger, you can easily discover and connect with influencers, using thousands of filter combinations to refine results and find exactly who you're looking for.
Filter by social platform, amount of followers, locale, keywords and phrases, engagement rate, and more. You can also use Tagger's unique affinity tool to match your brand or product with the perfect influencers that will drive the highest engagement to your campaigns. Then, use social listening to research competitors' campaigns and strategies.
Tagger's end-to-end platform supports your campaign from start to finish, helping you save time, save resources, and find the perfect influencer for your campaigns. Brief your project, manage your partnerships, and improve content right from Tagger. Then report accurate results at scale, using the easy modular reporting tool to customize and export just the way you want.
Tagger is for agencies, marketers, brands, and everyone in between. With availability in 10 languages, Tagger is a global platform ready to connect you with the world's best in social influencing. Not to mention 24/7 customer service with a dedicated success manager.
Simply sign up for Tagger. Then, a customer success rep will guide you through onboarding. Now, run your first campaign, and last, report your success.
Maximize your campaign ROI by offering a solution that's based on real data, not guesswork.
Go to taggermedia.com and get a free demo today.
Cool. So basically, how have we evolved past the olden ways in terms of what we were looking at? So I think one of my first ever clients to ever experiment this on was Diageo in East Africa. And basically the backstory is they reached out to us. And there were so many chatters, especially when we went to meetings. And one of the biggest ask was then, how can we better track our ROI, right? And what this unlocked for us is more budgets, especially within this influencing space, because your procurement team basically understands and can actually see the value that's actually coming to this. So back to my questions. Basically the next step is just taking you through the different stories in terms of then how we've been able to sort of answer the questions. So how can we automate the whole process? So what we did to answer this question for our client is we basically have a dashboard, a self-reporting dashboard that basically pulls posted in real time. So how the AI works basically is you train it with hashtags, mentions, phrases, basically pull from a specific influencer that you're actually tracking. So what this does, it means faster reporting, removal of the whole guesswork thing, or even removal of, has my campaign started? So the client has one sort of front-facing dashboard that they can actually track this. Then the power of the dashboard is you can actually track the reach in real time and how the reach is building. Again, because reach also takes time to build. The value that actually post is actually bringing you in real time. The second question was, how then can we remove the subjectivity? Mostly in Kenya, what used to happen is most clients will actually tell you, can you work with this influencer? I think they work best for this particular campaign. So we remove that guesswork because we use data to basically show you the stats of the influencer even before taking them up on a campaign. We actually run audit and brand safety checks within the platform just to make sure that these influencers actually have a clean record and they won't mess the reputation of the company. So we go in depth post by post, and you can actually search, look at past campaigns that they've actually done, see how this kind of influencer actually perform, especially when they're doing this for brands, but vis-a-vis how their own content is performing, and better give the clients sort of better results as well. Then how can we ensure the influencers selected are brand safe, and how we can moderate them? So this platform has really sort of helped us sort of moderate content on a weekly basis or even on a daily basis. We're able to catch people deviating from the brand sort of comms, people basically not following the brief. With this moderation reports, we're able to pull down such kind of posts that are actually going there. Within the platform as well, it has an inbuilt sort of capacity where you can actually look at content before it actually goes up and better moderate before even the damage happens. Are the influencers selected authentic? So what we've realized is most influencers are actually not that good at their game, especially when it comes to pushing brands, right? And sometimes you take them on, and then towards the end of the campaign, that's when you're realizing that they're not actually really that authentic, which really, really impacts your ROI. So what we do is we have weekly sessions where we take through our client and the influencers through sort of like a reflection sort of phase. We review their content. Then we also review past content that they've actually ever done, filtering that by the most engaging content so that the influencers can actually sort of reflect back to what actually got them there in the first place. I remember one time, one of the influencers we were actually handling for Tankare had really poor engagement rate. Right? She's a good brand fit, but she was actually really struggling with this. So what we did is we actually sort of looked at her most engaging content. And one of the things that we realized, especially when she talks about family, because she's known for talking about blended families, which is a very foreign concept in Kenya. So when we saw that, we asked her, are you okay then to work with your husband for a collaboration on your next video? And she was up to the challenge. Her engagement rate jumped all the way from 0.75 to a 3.5% engagement rate. That test and learning, that review of content basically helps you better the campaign, which also reflects on your ROI. So which influencer is a fit for my brand, audience, or even category? I think I've covered that, so I'll just jump. Are there ways to make the influencers more measurable within the platform from a post-by-post basis? We can do that from the platform. How can we share data with the influencers for them to learn? And this is very key. So what the platform does is it's really an exchange program where you give access to the influencers and they can actually see historical content, right? So they're able to learn from the past, where they're able to search other influencers and just see what they're doing and learn from them from a global point of view. Then how do I justify ROI? Within the next slide, I'll just take you through a simple metrics that we've actually been using to help us track our ROI. It has actually helped us sort of get in a good space, especially with the client, and unlock more budgets within this. So I'll introduce a metric called EMV, which is earned media value, which is heavily borrowed from PR in terms of earned media value. Now, the way we calculate this is slightly different. So we assign a dollar value to every action taken on a post. So this can be a comment, a save. This is a comment, a save, a like, a share. And once we assign that dollar value using the current media rates that we have automatically on the platform, then we're able to tell what value this post or what value this whole campaign actually brought back to the business. So EMV can be incredibly insightful to have. It also allows marketers to assign numerical values to the efforts that they actually put in, but sometimes it can be very subjective. So what we do is, over and above using this, we use other social media platforms as well to help us validate the EMVs assigned. So how do we calculate this? So EMV equals how many users were reached, so in terms of impressions, reach, etc., or action taken, which is a like, comment, etc., times the number of CPM by different verticals. So based off of different social media platforms. So based off of this, then we're able to give the client a module that they can actually work with in terms of the earned media value. And some of the terms that we actually use within the platform. So what is the value per every comment? What is the value by every like? And then that's how we calculate them backwards to give the clients a way to track their ROIs. Thank you.
If you work in marketing or advertising, you know what it's like. You are constantly under pressure to create high-performing campaigns and maximize ROI. On the plus side, you have access to more useful data about your audience than ever before. But the truth is, most marketers have neither the time nor the right tools to uncover the golden nuggets they need from a vast amount of available data. Until now. Telmar's insights and statistics solutions help you uncover key insights about your target audience quickly and easily. Now, you can combine all your data into a single resource that allows you to uncover precise and hidden audiences in seconds. You can identify optimal audience segments for each client and campaign, then match those segments to just the right media channels. You can create professional reports that summarize your findings and generate meaningful data visualizations that export to slides at the touch of a button. Ready to supercharge your advertising campaigns? Contact Telmar.
A big thank you to you, Joe. Thanks so much for being part of the conversation. Really, really appreciate it. Now we're heading to a panel discussion titled Why Digital Anthropologists Are the Missing Link on Your Data Science Team. This will include James Ingram, CEO of Splashlight and Telmar, and the founder of the Live Center, Katie Hillier, Chief Digital Anthropologist at the Live Center, Ingrid Brudvig, the Digital Anthropologist at the University of Cape Town, and Christian Vlad, Head of Analytics at Telmar. Now, see what I mean? Earlier when I said the United Nations is looking at us and slightly jealous, we have people in Cape Town joining us, we have people in France joining us, we even have people in the US joining us for this. This is really, really, really going to be some cool stuff. So for some context, James Ingram is an experienced entrepreneur and executive with a global track record in the technology sector and a thought leader in the creative and visual arts, drawing on over 20 years in the business. In 2005, he became CEO of the New York-based Splashlight, which is now, get this, the leading photography and video provider for retailers and brands. In 2019, he combined his role as CEO of Splashlight with the same position at Telmar a long-established global supplier of advertising and media information software and services, both under Liv's holding entity, founded by James with the purpose to explore how people live in this new digital world. Katie has worked as a digital anthropologist for over 10 years, running global digital anthropology labs in the innovation consultancy space. Now, she has a passion for bringing empathy to big data and believes in a future where digital anthropology becomes essential as data science across all aspects of society. Today, she is the Chief Digital Anthropologist at the Live Center, a non-profit organization that's committed to bringing digital innovation to anthropology. Ingrid, on the other hand, is a digital anthropologist focused on the intersections of gender, data, technology, human rights, and belonging in the digital age. She has taught digital anthropology at the University of Cape Town, led research on women's rights online at the World Wide Web Foundation, and works with women at the table. And last but definitely not least, Christian. Now, in his 20 years at Telma, he's had the chance to cover activities such as data and knowledge modeling, business intelligence, R&F modeling, and prediction and building tools for revenue optimization, audience forecasting, and survey data analytics. We are so thrilled to have these people all together and ready to enthrall us and also share their little gems of knowledge. So without any further ado, over to you, team.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're really excited to dig into this topic. It's really so relevant to the work that we're doing at our nonprofit, the Live Center, and we're excited to talk about what that is and its meaningful efforts. And then a topic that, as the research and data world, it's really relevant to what's going on. Just a little background, the Live Center is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing digital innovation to anthropology. I may say, why is that? Well, we believe that if we can innovate the digital tools used for anthropology, such as the ethnography, it's going to give these anthropologists the ability to gather deeper human insights at a pace and scale of data science, and really making that big data more human, more equal, more ethical. So there's really a big impact to society if we can enhance the ability of anthropology. And to push this forward, and we're very proud of this, we worked for 3 years to make it happen. We've launched with UNESCO, a global partnership to advance digital innovation in anthropology. And the first phase of this partnership is a 4-year collaboration to unleash this global movement and really open source technologies, academic programs, career opportunities, awareness of the power of anthropology, especially innovative anthropology, to create more ethical, cohesive, and empathetic society. And this discussion today about why digital anthropologists or anthropologists in general are the missing link in your data science team, this is going to be a fun one to talk about. Because these innovations given to anthropologists, these tools and methods and talent will change the game in consumer insights and measurement. Gartner said this, that 70% of organizations will shift their focus from big to small and wide data by 2025. And using big data alone for insights leads to bias and gaps of understanding. Thick data or small and wide data is needed to fill those gaps. But data science alone is not equipped to gather and analyze that thick data, particularly at the speed and scale that's needed. So data teams need this new diversity of mindset. They need this skill set, this technology to bring thick data to big data. They need these anthropologists, these modern anthropologists who have the right technology tools and methods to meet the scale and speed of data science so that leaders make better decisions, so that insights are deeper and more balanced in the why behavior of humans. So why don't we just dig into the panelists, and I'll just introduce them all for time's sake. So Ingrid Brugdig is a digital anthropologist, and she's been consulting on gender and tech and digital equality. So there's really not a better person for us to be having on this panel, and we're really grateful that you're there. Her PhD is in digital anthropology, and she's focused on the intersections of gender, data, technology, human rights, and belonging in the digital age, things that are on all of our minds. She's taught digital anthropology at the University of Cape Town, led research on women's rights online in the World Wide Web Foundation, and she works with women at the table. So it's a privilege to have you here, Ingrid. And Christian Vlad is head of analytics at Telmar. In his 20 years with Telmar, he's led and had the chance to cover activities such as data and knowledge modeling, business intelligence, reach and frequency modeling and predictions, building tools for revenue optimizations, optimal campaign allocation, audience forecasting, and even some pioneering research on the ability to analyze data and protect privacy. So we're proud to have you here, Christian, and look forward to your input. And of course, Katie Hillier, our chief digital anthropologist at the Live Center. Katie, as a digital anthropologist, has been running global digital anthropology labs in the innovation consultancy space for over 10 years. She has a passion to bring this empathy to big data and really believes that the future of where digital anthropology becomes as an essential as data science across all aspects of society. So today, as the chief digital anthropologist at the Live Center, it's a nonprofit, as we mentioned, really committed to bring this innovation. We're proud to have you here, Katie, and thank you for all your passion that you bring to this initiative. So why don't we just kind of get started? And we got 3 core questions that we're gonna take the next 15 minutes and kind of dig into. So let's get off with our panelists, get them responded to the headline question here. So why are digital anthropologists and the anthropological mindset the missing link on the data science team? And maybe we'll start with Ingrid first. We'll get your input first.
Thank you so much. And hello, everyone. Greetings from Cape Town. Thank you for the invitation to join the panel. It's great to be with you all today. So that's a great question. And I think the bottom line is that digital technologies and really the wider process of digitization in the world is just changing everything about the way we live, work, relate, find joy, navigate differences, and increasingly also the way that government and the economy functions. And AI algorithms and the results of their automated decision-making fueled by big data are actually set up to continue to ingrain the same sort of inequalities, bias, discrimination, and hierarchies that we see in the world today based on the current systems of data and classification that are emphasizing bias related to, say, gender, race, geography, language. And this has been termed by some actually as a new era of digital colonialism. And the world is really at a moment in history where there's the opportunity to course correct and to reimagine new models and new data processes and systems, to relook at the assumptions that are behind such big data and really to navigate new systems to drive equality and human rights and inclusion. And this is something that we're working on at Women at the Table and our Alliance for Inclusive Algorithms. We actually have a call for proposals that's currently open. So if you do work on this, feel free to reach out. But also just to situate that the discipline of anthropology itself went through a transformation and a decolonization process. Although anthropology now is very much a discipline that's based on a deep ethics of care and a deep ethics of representation, very much based on making the world safe for human difference. That wasn't always the case. And anthropology was actually a tool used by colonial governments and administrations as a system of extraction, of measurement and control, and systematic violence. And there are parallels to be drawn really with the role of data science and technology mediated governance, which itself is opaque and untransparent and unaccountable because there are so few of us in the world who speak the language of data science and are really able to scrutinize and understand the systems and their very transformative and important implications. So I'll stop at that.
Okay. Well, so by just summaries, I mean, I think what you're saying is the perspective of the human that an anthropological mindset brings is there to balance the data science engineering mindset that we're trying to see, and it drives back equality. Christian, do you have something you want to add from the data science side? Why you see the benefit of that combination?
I think Christian just lost his internet connection.
Oh,
very
you're right.
briefly.
I think
So I'm happy to sort of jump in.
So how about Katie? Yes. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, digital anthropologists, in my mind, and again, anthropologists in general, are these sort of like thick data experts. We're great at sort of understanding humans, and thick data was coined by Tricia Wang at a TED Talk about 10 years ago. But we're really trained in understanding cultures and the sort of larger context of our lives, right? And that's really important, right? When you think about big data, I think we're in this movement where thick data will really define this next era of what big data looks like. I think we started this first wave of big data and data science was really focused on building tools, for big data. The second wave was really focused on building the talent and the skills to really use these tools. And now I really see ourselves in this third wave that's all around blending thick and big data together and bringing data diversity, cognitive diversity, interdisciplinary mindsets and skill sets together, design a much more equal and ethical data structures, gathering, and analysis methods, right? And so thick data is obviously different. The data of anthropologists is very different than big data, because thick data aims to uncover emotion. It's about stories. It's about models of the world used through ethnographic methods like ethnography, but also digital methods like video chats, mobile diaries. But it's squishy, right? It's collected in these small sample sizes. But it provides new perspectives and meaning. And data scientists really gather and analyze, obviously, big data. That's our skill. But big data is basically the opposite of thick data in my mind, and many. But obviously, mostly because it's quantitative, right? It's quantitative in nature, and it deals with numbers and figures, right? And it's incredibly valuable. It's helped us understand the world in a really elaborate way. But of course, as we mentioned, there's context missing there, right? It's void of some certain
for
context.
sure. Yeah.
So I think that's, I heard someone once describe this sort of, using big data alone is like opting out of one of your five senses. And each of your senses.
That's a good way to say it.
Right?
Yeah, to like provide you
information around the world. Today, I think, adding another sense like thick data to big data can really help open up new viewpoints. So I think anthropologists, and bringing that mindset to data teams and data science teams can really help us blend big and thick data and really help our organizations advance.
All right. It's tough to keep on time here. There's so much to say. So Christian, what about you? What as a data scientist kind of point of view, what do you think of this topic and this concept?
Well, I am looking at the problem from the other perspective, and I think that, well, domain knowledge is an essential component of data science in all data science projects. And for those which are related to human behavior, well, human behavior is part of the domain, and anthropologists are the domain knowledge experts in this sense. So they should have a privileged role in defining projects' objectives, and because there's no value in a perfectly accurate data science model which is irrelevant. Right? They can help, well, in such projects, the input quantities represent in general measurable actions, behaviors, and the relationship between those actions and the outcome may pass through some hidden variables, and the anthropologists based on their qualitative analysis can help detect those variables and thus help the data scientists in the feature engineering process.
Yeah, really getting to the why in behavior. I think it's what you can hear, right? Is that if you understand the where, what, and the when, which data scientists are so good at, the why behaviors take another perspective and take another kind of data set to get to the why behaviors.
Exactly.
And when you have those why behaviors, you have a more ethical, more rounded, more accurate vantage point of decision making.
Yeah, so this touches to model interpretability, because the anthropologists can ensure that the data scientist models are interpretable, and they can also use the qualitative data to explain some unanticipated results that
That's
can
right.
come out of those models.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, then there's the sampling, the bias aspects. There are two aspects of them. There's the sampling bias. Most data-driven modeling methods assume that the representativeness of the available data set with respect to the population of interest. And anthropologists can help identify the sampling bias and ensure that the levels are acceptable or help reduce it. And there's also the evaluation, the model bias, which a model with a good accuracy, but with systematic errors on some groups of population can be considered good from some perspectives, but the anthropologists can help in identifying evaluation metrics which are equitable.
Yeah, very true. So why don't we roll to the next one, as it's kind of related? You know, what do you think is getting in the way of getting digital anthropologists and anthropologists in general to be collaborating and working together with the data science teams? Ingrid, you wanna handle that one first?
Sure. Well, I'll come in briefly just with my classical anthropologist hat on and say that I think it comes back a lot to the issue of identity and belonging and the silos of how research methodologies, data collection, funding are structured, and a lack of interdisciplinarity generally. I think the really good points made and really important points about the different types of data and narratives that back them, and the need to really relook at the assumptions behind the data and look at data and data collection as a process of just building relationships and thinking about how we want to represent ourselves in the world. And I think that's a really important underpinning to the intersection of the disciplines.
Okay, yeah, awareness is really going to be educational awareness of the power of the science. I think it's really what you're saying. They're not even aware, and reforms in how we go into human insights in the digital world are needed. And I appreciate how you're bringing that up. What about you, Christian? What do you think is kind of getting in the way of these sciences coming together on a data stack and looking for answers to people's behavior?
So one aspect of the problem is that the data science manipulates numbers, and the qualitative data is not easily reduced to numbers by definition, in a way. And then the qualitative data gathering takes and analysis takes time. So maybe automatizing the analysis through some processes like learning and knowledge modeling, that would help. And the mixed analysis is complex to plan and to conduct, and maybe this is why it didn't happen so much until now, and there's no sufficient momentum. And I think that if we begin working on that, then the processes will begin to be more formalized, and then that will bring us will bring more momentum into that.
Exactly, very true. It's actually the second tenet of the center is these technologies, is innovating the digital technology tools, because it's not about changing the anthropological process. It's about tools. It's about getting those research tools there so those methods can be applied at a speed and scale of data science. And I think that's an important point of view. It's just the tools aren't available yet, or aren't sufficient to get those data sets moving into the data lakes at the speed that you need to. And leaders then just lean on it. What about you, Katie? What do you think is in the way?
Well, I'm in agreement with so much of what's been discussed today. I really see, ethnography, while incredibly valuable, can be slow in the world of data science. And so we need new tools in addition to ethnography, not to replace it, of course. I think this aspect of collaboration between a team of data scientists and a consumer insights team and a future anthropology team, that really disrupts silos in a business, right? And how organizations work. They don't usually work together. So we need to think about new ways around collaboration, because that's not as normal. And I guess, again, to Christian's point, blending thick data and big data is tricky. There's this great Neil deGrasse Tyson quote that I love that says, in science, when human behavior enters the equation, things go nonlinear. That's why physics is easy and sociology, or I would say anthropology, is hard. And I think that, that's the challenge that we're up against. And so we can figure that out, but it's an important one. And I think also we need to define career paths and training for anthropologists outside of academia. How do we take anthropologists and bring them into the world of data science and big data, and talk about what that looks like, and train us in the world of data and how to work with it in new ways, because we're navigating and living such interesting, different lives in these digital spaces. So how do we do that, and how do we think about that in a new way? I think there's also the last thing is just like, this will slow down this sort of incredible speed to innovation a little bit. And we need to be aware of that and what that looks like. And I think thinking about, we don't want speed without accuracy, right? Because accuracy allows us to be more ethical. And so I think we need to have that discussion around that as well.
Great. Well, great thoughts on these two topics. I think like now let's open up to the audience for questions on the topic, and then we can hear what people say, and we'll direct it.
Plus 94 Research was founded in 1998 by its main shareholders, Sifiso Falala and Tirani Mabunda, and has since grown to become a world-class and full-service market research company. We design, implement, and interpret research surveys in South Africa and at an international level. Our service is benchmarked on responsiveness, creativity, and practicality. We specialize in both quantitative and qualitative research methodologies. Surveys are carried out face-to-face, by computer-assisted telephone interviews, online, via email, observational techniques, focus groups, and in-depth interviews.
Awesome stuff there from James, Katie, Ingrid, and Christian. We really, really appreciate it. That was really insightful. And so we have a couple of questions just as we wrap up today's conference from the audience. And so we thought, let's just look at that. I'm going to leave it very open-ended for the whole panel to answer this. But this question comes from an audience member today, and they're saying, James and the rest of the panel, you mentioned earlier about UNESCO and the relationship which has been created. So what are the plans on education, and will that extend to Africa? Over to you.
Thank you. That's a great question, and 100%. Africa is a core part of the initiative. And in fact, I think I may direct it to Katie, because Katie is really focusing at the Live Center on our educational path. So Katie, what do you think is the best way to explain how we're trying to be inclusive in all the continents and cultures?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, as part of the Sustainable Development Goals within UNESCO, a focus on Africa is an incredibly important one. And this initiative with UNESCO, a big part of it is focusing on how do we bring more innovation in digital anthropology to education and academic programs around the world, and particularly focused on Africa. And this will involve thinking about partnerships with universities and leaders and professionals and anthropologists in Africa as well. And so what we'll be looking to do, and we're currently looking to do, is find leaders at universities to partner with to further this initiative, and think about how do we co-create and imagine what digital anthropology looks like within this sector.
And I think the only thing I would add to Katie's point is what's important is that the more and broader this awareness is, then local anthropologists that are trained in each area are the ones who are contributing to those data science teams, rather than importing this science from someplace else. We should have a very rich amount of talent in every country in this talent. The universities locally should be teaching this so that you don't have to import that it's local, that kind of science, that kind of influence has a local point of view in contributing to the power of the science.
Fantastic. And here's another question from Celia. Celia would like to know, how do you see big data and research companies merging and bring a united front to brands? I'll leave it open-ended again. Anyone would like to answer that from the panel? Katie, yes.
Yes. Can you repeat the question one more time? I think I just my audio messed up.
Sure. The question from Celia is, how do you see big data or data and research companies merging and bring a united front to brands?
Yeah, I think this is all around collaboration, right? I think we mentioned the point around sort of silos and how a lot of this data is kept very separate. And I think part of the merging is around thinking about how do you both merge the mindset around the sort of more qualitative and quantitative mindsets of these researchers, but also how do you think about how to blend that data together, right? And those two things can be really exciting, but I think as we mentioned, can be a little bit, they're coming from very different worlds and perspectives. And so I think there's an opportunity to sort of start experimenting with what that looks like through research projects and innovation collaborations together. So I think it's really about just coming together and starting to see what that looks like, because I think right now within organizations, we spend a lot of time in different departments. And so how do you start testing that kind of collaboration on new projects and bringing those data streams in together?
Fantastic. Oresti, I know you have a question for the panel, so over to you.
Besides a question, it was just to answer that thing from Celia as well. I think what is also really critical is the trust factor, because a lot of the times the brand or the research company doesn't really want to kind of share that data. So we've got to build that trust in order to be able to have that merged. And I know, Katie, you're right. To merge data can be an absolute nightmare, but I think trust is the number one key, I think, to all of that. So do you want me to ask the question, Sia? Do you want me to ask the question live? Is that what you're saying to me? Okay. So James and your team, I think my question is, how long do you think it will take before there are digital anthropologists actually working together with data scientists, specifically within brands and even the research companies?
I think we're going to be seeing parts of that happening next year. We've been just stunned at the amount of innovation that is going on already around the world. And this initiative is just collecting those voices together. And the amount of momentum since we started advocating in June at the signing of the partnership has just been tremendous. So I think it'll be next year. I would be shocked if we're not. There's so much talent. There's so much excitement around how can this qualitative science improve insights that basically we're just looking for partners who want to use the talent to experiment together. So data suppliers, insight companies, brands, we're looking for companies who want to pilot some projects and find those researchers who want to volunteer to prove out its power. So I think it'll be very quickly, Oresti.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, James. And thank you so much to the panelists as well. You guys are absolute rock stars. You know, we do pride ourselves to say we have the whole world practically with us, from France to the US to right here in South Africa joining us. And we do understand for some of you it is very, very early. So we appreciate the fact that you are here and you made time for us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome stuff. And so to you watching, thank you so much as well for being part of the conversations this morning. It really, really, really has been absolutely incredible to kickstart the 2021 PAMRO Virtual Conference. It's only day one, 2 more days to go. And it's been absolutely incredible and will continue to be quite an exciting ride. Thank you so much for being with us. And we look forward to you joining us tomorrow, again from 11 a.m. Central African time. Another big thank you to our partners who have made today possible. Thank you very much to Borderless Access, to DSTV Media Sales, to Nielsen, Telmar, Ornico, Plus 1994 Research, and Ipsos. And I just do want to quickly mention that it would be absolutely remiss of me if I didn't just say to all of our colleagues and peers in Ghana, in the Ghanaian advertising industry, we do absolutely understand that a giant tree has fallen. So, today we think about Mr. T very affectionately in our thoughts and our prayers. And our condolences go out to his loved ones and colleagues who just need that extra thought in these tough times. So Mr. T, this one is definitely for you. Until tomorrow, thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to it. My name is Sia Sangweni. Have a fantastic rest of your afternoon.